Chapter 1660. After the two sides reached an agreement, Han Fei said, "Although we have to fight this battle, if you can wait a little longer for me, the effect may be better." The Life Queen looked at Han Fei. "What are you going to do?" Han Fei grinned. "I'm going to the White Shell Royal City." Luo Xiaobai asked in surprise, "Where are you going?" Han Fei grinned. "There's a forbidden trial field in the White Shell Royal City, which is very suitable for my cultivation. If I go there, I can reach the peak." Thinking of Han Fei's ability to transform into an inferior manfish, Luo Xiaobai's heart did a flip. Judging from Han Fei's words, he must have been to the White Shell Royal City. The Life Queen asked, "How many years do we need to wait for this battle?" The Life Queen had estimated the time conservatively. For a normal person, it might take 100 years or even longer to go from the peak of an advanced venerable to the peak of the venerable realm. However, the Life Queen felt that it might take a few years for Han Fei. It could even be said that it could be even shorter. Han Fei said, "I'm not sure how long this infiltration will take, but it shouldn't be very long. I suggest that the people of the Yin-Yang Heaven come first. This kind of war between two armies requires cooperation and familiarity with the geographical environment. We can't fight a war without preparation." The Life Queen didn't object this time. As long as it wasn't a half-king, it wouldn't be a problem. So she replied straightforwardly, "Okay, there aren't many of you. The 11 human tribes can accommodate you. However, are you sure you can sneak in without the White Armor Emperor noticing?" Han Fei smiled and said, "That's my problem." After leaving the Waterwood Divine Palace, Peaceful took the two of them to the human territory. This time, Peaceful went to Wushang Shui again. Based on Han Fei's understanding of Peaceful, it was 100% because the two of them were close. When Wushang Shui saw Han Fei again, he said in surprise, "Your strength?" Han Fei smiled politely. "I got some opportunities." Wushang Shui really wanted to roll his eyes. What kind of opportunities could make people grow so fast? After Peaceful and Wushang Shui talked for a while, Wushang Shui's eyes widened and she looked at Han Fei with a complicated expression. If she hadn't known Han Fei, she would have thought that he had gone crazy. This guy was actually discussing with her Lady Queen about destroying the White Shell's royal city? Looking at Luo Xiaobai, Wushang Shui said, "It's such a big deal. Will Her Majesty inform the Cloud Sea Divine Tree directly?" Han Fei smiled and said, "Of course. I'm just here to visit the Cloud Sea Divine Tree with the commander of the Yin-Yang Heaven Army." Luo Xiaobai was speechless. Han Fei had invented a new phrase again. Tactical commander? This name sounded quite mysterious. In fact, Han Fei knew that he would succeed. As long as the Life Queen wasn't stupid, she wouldn't reject him. After all, destroying the White Shell Kingdom would bring her too many benefits. And Han Fei's purpose was actually very simple. He needed to use the Lightning Prison. Since he was already here, why not destroy the White Shell capital city along the way? Moreover, this would also improve the relationship between the Yin-Yang Heaven and the Waterwood Heaven. In the future, if something happened to the cage while he was away, the Life Queen could take care of it. As for the Life Queen coveting the Yin-Yang Heaven, that would be complete nonsense. Covet it? He had coveted it a long time ago. There was no need to wait until now. Moreover, with the Sea Cloud Tower around, the Life Queen actually knew the situation in the Yin-Yang Heaven very well. Half a day later, the Dark War Port. Han Fei took Luo Xiaobai to visit all the 4 battlefields. He wondered if it was because the Blood Sea Divine Wood City had been destroyed. The battle on the Flame Sea had become smaller. When Han Fei told Luo Xiaobai about the Dark War Port, Luo Xiaobai said, "Yes. I've already understood the situation here. I'm just surprised that our strength is obviously not enough. Hundreds of thousands of hidden fishers are just a drop in the bucket for them. Only the explorers and venerables are really useful. But the Life Queen doesn't agree to let the Half-King Realm experts come, which weakens the advantage of the Yin-Yang Heaven again. Does it mean that she only likes you?" Han Fei grinned. "Well, at least I have a lot of cards to play." Luo Xiaobai asked, "You're not doing this to let them fight, are you? For the Waterwood Heaven, it doesn't matter if the people of the Yin-Yang Heaven come or not. The Life Queen only likes you, so even if you don't bring anyone, she will agree to this war." Han Fei said indifferently, "Do you think the waterwood heaven is very strong? In fact, it's not. After going to the cage, I knew that both the yin-yang heaven and the waterwood heaven have actually declined. There are pitifully few strong masters. And there are 36 immortal palaces. I suspect that there are still many powerful immortal palaces as powerful as the one in the cage. Can you imagine? Even if the yin-yang heaven and the waterwood heaven unite, they may not even be as powerful as 10 to 20% of the other immortal palaces. Maybe, because there is no cage, the other immortal palaces may be unified. In that case, even the power in the cage may not be comparable to that of the other immortal palaces." Luo Xiaobai said, "Do you think? In the future, the yin-yang heaven and the waterwood heaven will inevitably collide with other immortal palaces? So, the current alliance is actually inevitable?" Han Fei nodded. Waterwood Immortal Palace. At this moment, Peaceful was also asking the same thing. The Life Queen said indifferently, "You have to look at the future. Temporary gains and losses don't actually mean much. Even if the White Shell Royal City is still there, it's not impossible. I'm betting on Han Fei." Han Fei and Luo Xiaobai only stayed in the Waterwood Heaven for less than a day before they returned to the Scattered Stars Island. On the Scattered Stars Island, people were still coming in full swing, and the City of Justice was almost full. For people who didn't see many strong masters in daily life, it could be said that now there were strong masters everywhere. Nightclubs and so on. They had long been crowded, and everyone was full. Zhang Xuanyu and Luren Kuang were also very busy. They didn't even know that Han Fei and Luo Xiaobai had left. 5 days later, on the Scattered Stars Island, outside the City of Justice, Luo Xiaobai organized 25 armies, each with 10,000 people. The estimate of the number was not beyond Luo Xiaobai's expectations. Even if all the hidden fissures in the entire thousand-star city were added up, the number might reach nearly 1 million. However, excluding the older ones and those who had scruples, according to the statistics, among 4 to 5 people, there was probably only one person who was willing to join this cross-region adventure. Luo Xiaobai knew very well that those who went to the Waterwood Heaven first would definitely be the group of people who could benefit the most. The amount of spiritual energy there was more, and the human race there had too many things to learn from and complement each other. There was also the Cloud Sea Divine Tree, where they could have unlimited crazy trials. In short, vision and courage determined that these 250,000 people would rise quickly. But in Han Fei's eyes, not to mention 250,000 people, even if there were 1 million hidden fissures here, the number was still very small. Could 1 million hidden fissures be compared to 1 million explorers? It was like the difference between the heavens and the earth, an insurmountable chasm. In fact, the rise of a race with hundreds of millions of people couldn't be easily achieved. It must require the efforts of generations after generations and the accumulation of time. In the past few days, a very appropriate name had spread among the army formations. This name was the Scattered Stars Expeditionary Army. It was impossible for all the people who participated in the Expeditionary Army not to feel nervous. However, in most people's hearts, there were many factors including anxiety, excitement, curiosity, and so on. During this period of time, some simple information was slowly revealed. At this moment, in the place where the Expeditionary Army was resting, someone secretly touched it and muttered, "Hey, have you heard? It said that there are several races in the Waterwood Heaven. In addition to the human race, there are demonic plants such as tree demons, a large number of insects, and birds. It's really hard to imagine why these races are on equal footing with humans." Someone sneered, "What do you know? I heard that the Life Queen is not a human, but a demonic plant clan." Someone interrupted, "Keep your voice down. I have a piece of news that you will never think of." Everyone couldn't help but look over and asked in a daze, "What news?" The man grinned and said, "I heard that the girls there are very beautiful." Phew, everyone fiercely despised this fellow. Compared with most ordinary people, the people from the big clans had long been arranged into various armies. It could be said that half of the people in this expeditionary army were actually from the big clans. As for the experts, most of them were from the aristocratic families. It couldn't be helped. This was the foundation of thousands or tens of thousands of years. They had resources and promotion channels, so ordinary rogue cultivators couldn't compare with them. Of course, the 36 towns had a large population, and many heavenly talents had emerged. In terms of strength, they were no worse than the children of the big clans. Although Han Fei had defeated the big clans, it was impossible for him to wipe them out. As long as they were obedient and didn't betray him, he would allow them to participate in the expeditionary army. This group of people was definitely the strongest in the Yin-Yang heaven. Even so, Han Fei had requirements for these people from the big clans. Han Fei showed up in person and directly announced a rule: any member of the big clans must hunt a sea demon expert of the same realm when they came to the Waterwood heaven. Or, they had to hunt 10 experts one small realm lower than them, or 100 experts 2 small realms lower than them, or 1,000 experts 3 small realms lower than them. These people were dissatisfied, but Han Fei didn't care. He didn't take these people on vacation. Do you want to remove your identity as a member of the big clans? You have to put in more effort than ordinary strong people. Otherwise, wouldn't it cause discord if you swaggered around all day long just because you came from a good family? Therefore, Han Fei had to let these people experience some tempering. 7 days later, when Peaceful appeared on the Scattered Stars Island, Han Fei knew that the Waterwood heaven was ready to accept them. On this day, the City of Justice was still in full swing. Suddenly, above the sky, a sky curtain bloomed. The figures of Han Fei and Luo Xiaobai appeared in the sky curtain. Everyone consciously stopped what they were doing. Needless to say, they knew what Han Fei was going to say. Many people even ran out of the city. They were going to see off the expeditionary army. In the eyes of many people, being able to muster up such great courage to go to another world to fight was definitely admirable. Han Fei said, "I think everyone already knows what I'm going to say. Human beings are not the only race in this world. In this sea, there are tens of thousands of clans. We have to go out and we have to become strong. The expedition represents danger, but it also represents opportunity. On the day I leave, the position of the Supreme Commander of the Scattered Stars Island will be temporarily replaced by the former Supreme Commander of the Scattered Stars Island, Shueishenqi. Now I announce, let's go." Chapter 1661. As the army set off, countless people rushed to send them off. Han Fei didn't take them through the Scattered Stars Island but through the entrance of the 10,000 Demon Valley. After all, he hadn't become a king yet, and there were some things that he didn't want others to know. At this moment, Luo Xiaobai was leading the army to set off. Han Fei closed the sky curtain and appeared on the top of the Empyrean waterfall. There was another person next to Han Fei. This person was none other than Chao Tianji, one of the 2 remaining demi-kings in Yin-Yang heaven. Han Fei said, "Except for you, everyone else in the Chao family has gone. This time, you have no choice but to pray that they don't die." Chao Tianji said with a sullen face, "I'm only at the half-king realm. Even if we go there, what can we do?" Han Fei sneered. "I can tell that you're a demi-king who hasn't passed the heavenly tribulation yet. Not just you, Tang Yin can't pass it either. Be content with what you have. For your Chao family, this expedition is a great opportunity. Although I look down on aristocratic families, if there are no more aristocratic families in this world, then I can't be bothered to look into the past." Chao Tianji said, "Since Marshal Han has made such a promise, I'll oversee the Yin-Yang sky and wait for the expeditionary army to return." The people of the Chao family were all in Han Fei's hands, so Chao Tianji didn't dare to use force. Otherwise, Han Fei would arrange some dangerous battlefields for the people of the Chao family. Therefore, he had no choice but to submit. In the Yin-Yang heaven, Chao Tianji couldn't threaten Han Fei with the people from the Thug Academy. Because in this operation, all the members of the Thug Academy had been mobilized, and none of them were left in the Yin-Yang heaven. After chatting with Chao Tianji, Han Fei jumped onto the back of the cloud whale. Tang Yin said, "So the Life Queen really doesn't allow half-monarchs to go there?" Han Fei said, "You can wait a little longer. When the cage is unlocked or when I become a king." To be honest, I don't mind having another king in the yin-yang sky. It's just that I'm afraid the providence and heaven and earth's spiritual energy of the yin-yang heaven aren't enough to create two monarchs at once. Tang Yen leisurely said, if you can break the heavenly Tao aren't you afraid that I'll snatch your king's path? Why don't you try? With that, Han Fei stepped into the void and disappeared. The cloud whale's enormous body flipped in the sky and continued to swim among the clouds. Tang Yen, who was hiding inside the cloud whale, didn't doubt Han Fei's words. The Han father and son's vision was not that small. However, that Chao Tianji better not block his way when the time comes. Otherwise, if Han Fei didn't kill them, Tang Yen would. In the Demon Plant channel, when those venerable realm powerhouses entered here, they were shocked and excited. Their strength was actually suppressed to the realm of hanging fishers? Ever since they became strong, they had never felt so weak. If someone were to attack them at this time, they would not be able to resist at all. Fortunately, everyone's strength was suppressed to the level of a hanging fisher, which reassured everyone. At this moment, Han Fei held the sky-hanging mirror in his hand and used it as usual. In the sky, Han Fei shouted, everyone listen up. Because of the channel restriction, our strength is temporarily suppressed to the realm of hanging fishers. Don't panic. Also, when they arrived at the Waterwood Sky, the 25 squads would be temporarily scattered and returned to the human race of the 11 divisions of the Waterwood Sky. However, you have to remember that in the Shuemu heaven, no matter who you are, even if you are a venerable, your highest commander is Luo Xiaobai. She will preside over your division of labor. When the time comes, Luo Xiaobai will summon everyone to return and reorganize the expeditionary army. As he spoke, the lens of the sky screen fell on Luo Xiaobai. Like a camera, Luo Xiaobai even looked up at the lens. Beside Luo Xiaobai was a group of people from the Thug Academy. Zhang Xuanyu couldn't help but sigh. I'm a little excited. Beside Zhang Xuanyu, Yi Xian snorted coldly. When you get there, remember not to take a fancy to any little girl. Let me tell you, although they look beautiful, they are all very old and can be your great-grandmothers. Unlike me, I'm still young. Zhang Xuanyu. Speaking of which, Yi Xian had also grown up. She was slim and plump. Even Zhang Xuanyu couldn't bear it. In any case, he reluctantly gave in. However, Yi Xian had said this several times along the way. This made Zhang Xuanyu even more curious. What did the little girl over there look like? A bold person couldn't help shouting, General Han, will we be bullied when we get to the Shuemu heaven? I heard that there are Zerg clan, Sky clan, and Demonic Plant clan there. They are all natives. Han Fei immediately shouted, let me tell you, when you get to the Shuemu heaven, you will go directly to the human race of the Shuemu heaven. Chief Commander Luo Xiaobai has already arranged for all the follow-up problems for you. When you get there, exchange more experiences with them. For example, the Shuemu Heaven's archery skills are unparalleled. In addition, the Zerg clan is simple and honest, the Demonic Plant clan is honest, and the Sky clan is interesting. These are all very friendly races. Don't fight and stir up conflicts when you get there. If anyone causes trouble, be careful that Chief Commander Luo will send you back to the Yin-Yang heaven. Luo Xiaobai looked at Han Fei, who was bragging in front of the sky-hanging mirror not far away and really wanted to kick him. Chief Commander Luo? That's so unpleasant. Old Jiang shouted at Han Fei, Brat, where did you arrange for us to stay? Han Fei turned off the sky curtain, turned around and grinned. Of course I can't arrange anything for you. Their venerable Wushang Shui of the Flying Feather clan has a good relationship with me. Old Bai hummed and said, that's good. When we get there, we have to visit him first. However, Peaceful was dumbfounded. Since when did you have a good relationship with Wushang Shui? Among the human venerables of the Shuemu heaven, you only know Wushang Shui. Oh no, there's also Yi Yuchen. At most, there's also Zhang Yao who you brought back. Half a day later, the Shuemu heaven, which had been preparing for several days, had even set up dozens of teleportation arrays at the channel. They were afraid that these people from the Yin-Yang heaven would be lost, so they specially prepared these arrays. When Han Fei came out of the teleportation array, he was completely stunned. Damn, So many people? Han Fei saw that in all directions, the Sky Clan was flying all over the place. On the main trunk of the Cloud Sea Divine Tree, in order to see what the people from the Yin Yang Heaven looked like, the insects had climbed all over the trunk of the Cloud Sea Divine Tree, densely packed. And on the branches and leaves of the Cloud Sea Divine Tree and the branches on both sides of the trunk, all kinds of tree men with messy branches were also watching. However, how many tree men could stand on the tree? Therefore, in all directions, a large number of vines and branches hung down. Anyway, they were all demonic plants, so they didn't need to use their eyes. As for those who didn't occupy the best position, they had already climbed all over the branches and trunks around them. It was the same to see with their perception. Of course, those on the main road were the humans from the 11 units of the Shuemu Heaven. After all, Han Fei represented the Yin Yang Heaven. Therefore, the venerables of the 11 units were all waiting here. Behind them was a group of explorers. Just like the people from the Yin Yang Heaven, the people from the Shuemu Heaven had heard the stories of the Yin Yang Heaven for tens of thousands of years. However, this was the first time that they had met on a large scale. This was a historic meeting. At this moment, there were at least hundreds of thousands of pairs of eyes gathered here, full of curiosity and expectation, waiting for the people from the Yin Yang Heaven to come and communicate. The moment Han Fei appeared, the crowd was in an uproar. All sorts of tiny sounds, murmurs, and buzzing filled the air. A member of the Sky Clan shouted, "Huh! Isn't that Han Fei?" A member of the Insect Clan buzzed, "I haven't seen him for a long time. He seems to have become stronger." A tree demon muttered, "He's still ugly. However, he's much more elegant than before." Han Fei's face was all black. Isn't this fucking welcome a bit too grand? It was Peaceful who appeared with Han Fei. When they saw Peaceful, countless people shouted one after another, "Envoy quiet! Greetings, Envoy quiet! Greetings, Envoy quiet!" When Peaceful heard the rumbling, she immediately said, "Lower your voices. It's all buzzing. Those big bugs, shut your mouths. People of the Sky Clan, don't keep chattering." Hum, hum, hum. Then Old Bai and the others appeared. However, the moment Old Bai and Old Jiang appeared, they were all dumbfounded and shocked. Old Bai took a deep breath. Those strange races were the first to be affected. Looking up, the densely packed bugs were like a human wall, so high that they couldn't be seen with the naked eye. However, Old Bai just scanned with his perception and immediately found that there were so many strong people in the Shuemu Heaven. There were as many as 11 human venerables in front of him. The total number of explorers from various tribes exceeded 100. And the number of hidden fishers here was almost as many as the expeditionary army of the Yin Yang Heaven this time. Look, humans, so many humans. Wow. So ugly. These people are as ugly as Han Fei. No, there are also good-looking ones among them. Look at that. Zhang Xuanyu, Yi Xian, Su Daiji, and the others were all dumbfounded. Zhang Xuanyu was shocked. Fuck, is that a human? The first thing he felt was a sense of crisis. Aren't those people a little too handsome? And those women, oh my god, how can they be so good-looking? They are all comparable to Yi Xian. Gulp. And among Han Fei's group, the one who received the most attention was none other than Wang Dashuai. A bug exclaimed, "Look at that fatty carrying a big iron block. He's so fat." A bug exclaimed, "I bet his belly is comparable to the Bug Queen's." A Sky Clan member chattered, "Look, there are more people coming in from behind. Oh, they're crooked. It turns out that only the first few are good-looking." Everyone from the Thug Academy. Chapter 1662. After all, the size of the exit was limited. In the channel, there were still people maintaining order, and people kept coming out. Most of these newcomers were shocked and dumbfounded. For example, the first batch to come out was the team led by the Thug Academy. Except for the people from the Thug Academy, everyone who had a little relationship with Han Fei was in this team. For example, the hidden fishers of the scout team on the skeleton shore, Yu Lingyun, and the others. Another example was the group of people who had stayed in the Empyrean Waterfall, the Scattered Stars 4th Unit, the Refining Hall, Junling, He Xiaoyu, and the others. The 36 towns were in the same batch as Han Fei. In short, everyone who had a little relationship with Han Fei came in the first batch. There was no backdoor operation. After all, it didn't matter who came first or who came last, they all arrived at the same time. It was only because everyone was closer that they were arranged together. Of course, this also had something to do with Han Fei. After all, Han Fei was very popular in the Yinyang sky. They had a good relationship with Han Fei, so of course they wouldn't deliberately alienate him. Luo Xiaobai also arranged all these people together. Among these 25 teams, Luo Xiaobai also had absolute control over these teams through the various commanders of the Scattered Stars Island. Otherwise, such a huge army couldn't be managed by one person at all. At this moment, Qing Qin, Yui, Wu Ming, and Ning Jingyao finally got together again, and they were chatting together. Ning Jingyao said, "Qing Qin, why didn't you hang out with the people from your academy? Why did you come to our team?" Qing Qin snorted. "I can't help it. I was isolated in the academy. Besides, you're all here. What am I doing over there? By the way, it's almost our turn. I'm so looking forward to it." Yui said, "Don't be ignorant. Stay calm. After all, this is their territory. We have to show our strength." Wu Ming held his long sword and said coldly, "Yes, we can't lose our momentum." After a moment, swish, swish, when Wu Ming and the others came out of the channel, they only felt their eyes light up. When they took a closer look, they all gasped. "Damn it, what the hell are those bugs that look like city walls over my head?" Also, the dense branches and vines made it seem as if they had entered an underwater jungle. Qing Qin took a breath. "There are only a few humans. Is this the Zerg clan?" Yui, spirit plant lineage. Hiss, if I'm not mistaken, we're standing on a tree, right? How big is this tree? Following that, a humming sound filled their ears. Wang Long's voice said, "Look at the one holding the sword, he looks pretty cool. That skinny guy is too thin and ugly, much uglier than Han Fei." Qing Qin looked around at the people around him. "Are they talking about me?" A tree demon shook its leaves. "I sense the aura of a demonic plant from that girl. This should be one of the more powerful human manipulators. Although she's not as good-looking as the people on our side, she's still better looking than the men on our side." Yui's face turned green. "Have I fallen so low that I have to compare myself to a man in terms of beauty?" However, when Yui noticed the fairy-like Shui Mu heavenly human, she gasped. Especially the women on the Shui Mu heavenly human side. "God, that skin, that figure, that face, you didn't feel good. Do the humans on this side all look like this? Why aren't there any good-looking ones?" Immediately afterward, Jiuyin Ling, Yu Lingyun, He Xiaoyu, and the others walked out one after another. The moment Jiuyin Ling appeared, there was a buzzing sound, and countless Zergs shouted in shock. "This one is beautiful. This one is the most beautiful." It seems that there are also beautiful people in the Yinyang heaven. Even the people on our side can't compare to them. A bird said enviously, "It seems that only explorers in the Yinyang heaven can be good-looking, right?" Although many people were amazed when they saw Luo Xiaobai and Yi Xian earlier. However, when these Zergs, the Sky Clan, and even the Shui Mu heavenly human, saw Jiuyin Ling, they couldn't help but be attracted by her otherworldly temperament. Some people even secretly sighed. Her temperament is even comparable to Her Majesty the Queen. Pushi. The eyes of the heavenly venerable Shui Mu and the explorers were glowing. Jiuyin Ling's beauty was worth fighting. A venerable even said to Han Fei via voice transmission, "Han Fei, can we propose to the women of the Yinyang heaven?" Han Fei grinned and replied, "Which one do you like?" The man said, "Here." "You mean the one in white?" Han Fei's smile turned cold. "Fuck off. I brought my men here to fight, not to flirt with you." Seeing Han Fei refuse, the venerable didn't think much of it. He guessed that Han Fei, this ugly man, must have taken a fancy to him. Why didn't he let others do it? How annoying. Gradually, more and more people came out of the exit. As a representative of the human race, Wu Shangxue walked out. In the past, Han Fei was also in Wu Shangshue's Flying Feather Tribe. Wu Shangxue looked at Luo Xiaobai and said, "The Flying Feather Tribe can accept 50,000 Yinyang heavenly human. The other 10 tribes can accept 20,000 each. Shall we set off now? Luo Xiaobai nodded and turned to Old Bai and the others. President, please lead the team. As long as you follow the instructions of the teleportation array, someone will guide you along the way. When you arrive, there will be someone to receive you. Old Bai nodded, turned around, and shouted in a low voice, "Follow me." More and more people came out of the entrance, and their speed was also increasing. Almost every moment, there were exclamations. Han Fei said goodbye to Luo Xiaobai and sneaked away. Half a day later, the Flying Feather Tribe. 5 teams, which meant 50,000 people, settled in the Flying Feather Tribe. The residence was on an uninhabited tree trunk, which seemed to have been deliberately vacated by them. Every leaf here could be used for cultivation. There were no houses in the Cloud Sea Divine Tree. It was the same to rest on the leaves of the Cloud Sea Divine Tree. Even on the Scattered Stars Island, many people didn't sleep in their houses. Just like the Dark Hunter Legion, they could sleep anywhere. Only when there was a fixed place to set up camp would there be a living requirement. Of course, for the people of the Thug Academy, they couldn't live without a house. According to Luo Xiaobai's communication and arrangement, almost everyone who arrived in the Shuemu Heaven would be arranged and introduced one-to-one. Although there were many people from the Yinyang Heaven, there were also many people from the other side. Not to mention one-to-one, even if there were more than one, it wouldn't be a problem, but there was no need for that. Although the people of the Yinyang Heaven came to prepare for war. But before that, they really had to familiarize themselves with the environment here. There was also a need for friendship between the Yinyang Heaven and the Shuemu Heaven. According to Han Fei's guess, in the near future, the cage might collapse at any time. At that time, the Yinyang Heaven and the Shuemu Heaven would definitely collide and even unite. In the further future, the Yinyang Heaven and the Shuemu Heaven might be invaded by other Zuantians. That wasn't impossible. Therefore, the friendship between the two was very necessary. At this moment, a group of people from the Thug Academy, including Luo Xiaobai, were eating hot pot on the leaves. At this moment, Luo Xiaobai didn't need to care about anyone. After all, there were one-to-one people guiding the people of the Yinyang Heaven. This time, even Han Fei didn't expect that the Shuemu Heaven would be so friendly. He had thought that after coming over, there would most likely be a fight. After all, the people of the Shuemu Heaven would despise the people of the Yinyang Heaven for being ugly. Once a small conflict broke out between the two sides, fighting would be inevitable. Just like himself, how many people had despised him when he first came here? To Han Fei's surprise, the people of the Yinyang Heaven didn't get angry when they were called ugly. Many people even tacitly admitted that they were ugly. Zhang Xuanyu said, "Yi Xian, sit down. Why are you sitting so close to me when we're just having a meal?" Yi Xian snorted and said, "I'm eating with you. What are you looking at today?" Zhang Xuanyu denied flatly. "Watch your words. Please don't ruin my image. I'm just admiring. Hey, don't hit me. Do you think I can't beat you?" Han Fei and the others were eating hot pot. Suddenly, Han Fei raised his head and looked at a leaf not far away. On that leaf, a man in a black cloak was sitting cross-legged. The void trembled, and Wushang Shui had already appeared. Wushang Shui looked directly at Han Fei. "Who is this?" Han Fei said indifferently, "The Grand Master of the Shuemu Heaven. There's no one you need to suspect in the entire Yinyang Heaven. Would you like to come over and have a hot pot?" Wushang Shui glanced at Han Fei indifferently and then at the black-cloaked man. "I can eat by myself." The appearance of Wushang Shui made the eyes of the members of the Thug Academy fall on the black-cloaked man. Han Fei shrugged helplessly and said, "Junior Uncle Faceless, have you been exposed so soon?" "Junior Uncle Faceless?" Yi Xian and the others looked at each other. Who is Junior Uncle Faceless? In fact, when the name Junior Uncle Faceless came out, except for Chu Jinan and Yi Xian, the others immediately knew who he was. Jiang Qin, Yang Xie, Wang Dashui, and the others all stood up and bowed. "Greetings, Patriarch. Eat your food. Just now, I went to the Great Illusionary Land to take a look. I didn't expect to be discovered. However, there are indeed a lot of strong masters here. The leader of the Flying Feather tribe is no weaker than me now. Han Fei said, when you recover to your peak, it won't be a problem for you to suppress the 1,000 stars again. Forget it. Eat your food. I'll continue to go to the great illusionary land. After dinner, Han Fei greeted Old Bai and the others, and then went to the side with Luo Xiaobai, Zhang Xuanyu, and Lu Renquang. Han Fei said, Xiaobai, now is not the time of war. After a few days of familiarizing yourself with the battlefield, let everyone fight normally. At the same time, it will also announce the arrival of the Yin-Yang Heaven to the Baibei royal city. During my absence, if any venerable on our side disobeys, you don't have to show them any respect. Patriarch is here. You can either fight or kill them. We must establish absolute authority. Luo Xiaobai nodded. Okay, I'll wait for your news. Hearing this, Zhang Xuanyu immediately said, Fei Fei, where are you going? Lu Renquang also said, what do you want to do secretly? Han Fei grinned. I'm going to the Baibei royal city. Zhang Xuanyu, Lu Renquang. Chapter 1663. According to Han Fei's plan, the most important purpose of the so-called expedition was not to fight but to communicate with the races of the two worlds. The people who came from the Yin-Yang Heaven were relatively small and not very strong. However, they were the pioneers of the Yin-Yang Heaven's contact with the outside world, and they were the most likely to rise. In any case, this expedition was of great significance. Han Fei specially communicated with Luo Xiaobai. At this moment, after making arrangements for everyone, Han Fei left a projection and left. This projection was only half as strong as a venerable one, which had little influence on Han Fei's actual strength. The sea where the Baibei royal city was located was 1,000,000 kilometers away. Han Fei took out the nautical panorama and searched for other entrances to the lightning prison. In fact, if Han Fei wanted to go to the lightning prison, he could either kill a heavenly talent from the Baibei royal city and sneak in, or find other entrances. Han Fei had thought that it hadn't been long since he left the Shuemu heaven, and it hadn't been long since he killed Zhang Xiaotian. If he disguised as Zhang Xiaotian and sneaked in, it wouldn't be a big problem. However, Zhang Xiaotian was a reincarnated old guy. God knew what kind of relationship he had with the White Armor Emperor. If Han Fei was seen through, he probably wouldn't be able to escape. As for the other heavenly talents, why would they open a trial in a forbidden area? It would also attract attention. After all, not everyone was qualified to enter a trial in a forbidden area. He had made a lot of preparations when he pretended to be the Fish Dragon King. Therefore, after weighing the pros and cons, Han Fei felt that it would be better to find another entrance. Was there only one small entrance in the vast lightning prison in the Baibei royal city? That was obviously impossible. As long as it was a space, there would always be a weakness. For example, the seal of the cage was strong enough, right? The stronger one was, the more difficult it was to enter, but it was only one kind of space. If one reached the highest level in the Tao of space, they could easily make a breakthrough. For example, Chen Huangdian had left a projection in the Yin-Yang Heaven from somewhere. It was not a problem for those mighty figures to pass through space barriers. Therefore, Han Fei believed that he should be able to find a way to enter with the nautical panorama. 2 days passed. Han Fei didn't get closer to the Baibei royal city. Instead, he got further and further away. In a region of dense fog close to the cage, there was a danger zone with a circumference of around 50,000 kilometers. Han Fei vaguely remembered that this place was marked as a dangerous place on the sea map that the Life Queen gave him. Although this place was a little far from the White Shell capital, it was even further from the Cloud Sea Divine Tree. Hence, the Life Queen wouldn't explore it rashly. However, although the Life Queen wouldn't personally explore such a place, that didn't stop her from sending people to explore it. Therefore, there was a mark on the map, which meant that this place might have been explored. Han Fei was surprised. Is the Thunder Prison here? Han Fei pondered. The weird thunder swamp in the Thunder Prison is so obvious. The Life Queen must know about it, right? Perhaps they hadn't finished exploring. Han Fei took out the 9 Palace Fate Ruler and casually measured it. When the ruler landed on the ominous hexagram, Han Fei smiled. Looks like it's not a big problem, we can enter. Buzz, once he entered the danger zone, the entire sea was filled with whirlpools. It was a bit like the abyssal chasm in the level 3 fishery, which was surrounded by a gale and a weird space. The same was true for this space. After Han Fei entered, he found that his perception was entangled by the whirlpools here, and he couldn't explore too much. The old turtle said, "My perception is also being sucked away, but there are creatures here." It was only natural that there were creatures in the sea. However, there were indeed very few creatures in such a dangerous place. Unless those creatures had completely adapted to such an environment. Han Fei didn't have any scruples. Although the suction force of the whirlpools was very strong as that of a peak-level explorer at the periphery, it couldn't shake Han Fei at all. When the whirlpools here had reached the level of a peak-level beginner venerable, a weird thing happened. Boom, a muffled thunder sounded at the bottom of the sea, and an electric arc came from afar and hit Han Fei. No matter how fast Han Fei was, he couldn't outrun an electric attack. Therefore, even though the attack wasn't too strong, Han Fei was still blasted back more than 100 kilometers. When Han Fei stabilized his body, he was surprised to find that the flesh and blood of his left arm had been completely cut open. Even the bones of his indestructible golden body had a shallow white mark left on them. Electric arc? That electric arc trying to penetrate me? It shouldn't be an electric arc. Moreover, isn't this attack a little too powerful? Han Fei switched the Tianqi Great Path to the Great Path of Time. Boom! When the electric arc appeared again, a blue barrier suddenly appeared in front of Han Fei. At that moment, a huge ribbonfish that was 10 meters long, flat, and as sharp as a sword appeared in Han Fei's eyes. In Han Fei's eyes, information emerged. Named Thunder Emperor Ribbonfish Introduction. This is a big Thunder Emperor ribbonfish that grows abnormally. Because it has been absorbing the power of lightning for a long time, its soul and body were shattered when it was young, but it was lucky enough to survive. The Thunder Emperor ribbonfish is not very intelligent, very aggressive, warlike, bloodthirsty, and loves lightning. Because its speed is as fast as lightning, its blade can cut ultra-quality divine weapons. Level 84 quality legendary, can grow. Realm entry contains spiritual energies 382545 combat skills, Thunder Flash, collectible Thunder Bone, Shadowless Scale, Eye of Agility, Emperor Tendon. Note, the Thunder Emperor ribbonfish is extremely rare. Among the thousands of clans in the sea, its speed can be ranked among the top 10,000. When he saw this information, Han Fei was surprised. Damn, this is an intermediate venerable ribbonfish? An intermediate venerable can cut its own flesh and blood? One could only imagine how much combat power its speed brought to it. It could be seen that when the speed reached a certain level, its combat power could soar. The reason why it couldn't cut his indestructible golden body was purely because of its realm. After all, Han Fei's indestructible golden body, in a sense, was comparable to that of a king. If it could be cut open by a mere intermediate venerable, how strong would this intermediate venerable be? Chilla, the moment the Thunder Emperor ribbonfish encountered the time barrier, it twisted its body and was about to dodge. However, Han Fei's void lines instantly stretched out. The Thunder Emperor ribbonfish turned into an electric arc and fled again. Han Fei didn't even have time to shout and directly activated the Dao. There's a restriction spell here. But that wasn't enough. Han Fei stepped on it, and the surrounding space was shortened. Hiss, at that moment after Han Fei did so many things, the Thunder Emperor ribbonfish had already run dozens of kilometers away as soon as a void line was buckled on it. Oh! Hundreds of beasts' devoured souls went straight to the soul of the Thunder Emperor ribbonfish, which made its body stiffen. Han Fei turned his hand and buckled all the void lines. He didn't give it any chance and directly took it down. Phew! Han Fei was slightly relieved. It seemed that this thing was only fast, but not as fast as the speed of light. If it was just the normal speed of lightning, Han Fei would have surpassed it by a lot. After all, the normal speed of lightning was generally only a few hundred kilometers per second. This was a venerable level sea beast that was good at speed. Of course, its speed was different. Therefore, its speed was much faster than the theoretical speed of lightning, at least 10 times faster, but it was still within the range of attack. If it hadn't met Han Fei, if it hadn't been bloodthirsty, the result might not have been like this. Being caught by Han Fei, it was doomed to die. The old turtle said, "Me. I've never seen this creature before. It's as fast as lightning. If it grows up, it shouldn't be underestimated. It's a pity that it has been caught by you now." Han Fei thought to himself, "Now the demon purification pot and the little rattan are incomplete, and I can't continue to synthesize new contractual spiritual beasts. So, I'll use this Thunder Emperor ribbonfish to upgrade Little Gold. Little Gold and the others can continue to be fused. For example, the 9-tailed mantis shrimp was also forcibly fused from 3 tails to 9. As for this Thunder Emperor ribbonfish, although it was also a legendary creature and could still grow, it was not domesticated after all. Therefore, Han Fei didn't care. After going another 8,000 kilometers into the dangerous place, Han Fei felt that the suction force of the vortex here had reached the level of a peak-level intermediate venerable. In other words, those who could come to this place had to be at least at the peak-level intermediate venerable. Generally speaking, it might be an advanced venerable. Obviously, if the creatures living here wanted to resist the power of lightning and quickly get rid of the suction force of the vortex, they either had to be extremely fast, like the Thunder Emperor ribbonfish, or they had to have tremendous strength to get rid of the suction force. Clank, clank, clank. At this point, Han Fei was standing above a vortex. This was the way pointed out by the nautical panorama, which meant that he should be able to enter the prison of thunder from here. Han Fei couldn't help but speculate that there were countless vortexes here. Did each vortex lead to a different place? Of course, this was just Han Fei's guess. After all, he had seen hundreds of powerful vortexes like this on his way here. At this point, Han Fei wasn't panicked. The ominous hexagram of the 9-palace ruler of Providence might be really ominous for others, but it was just a piece of cake for him. Without hesitation, Han Fei jumped into the vortex. When he entered the vortex, the crazy suction force made Han Fei's blood speed up. The qi and blood in his body began to spin like blades. If it were anyone else, even an advanced venerable, they might have been minced by his own flesh and blood. Han Fei instantly realized why such a place was rarely explored. When Han Fei began to spin with the vortex, he saw that the space at the bottom of the vortex was opened by the vortex. It was like a teleportation array that sent him out of this space. When the suction force disappeared, Han Fei saw nothing but darkness in front of him. Han Fei discovered, to his surprise, that it was an endless void. On the other side of the void, Han Fei saw a white spot. Needless to say, it was the exit. Boom, boom, boom. Han Fei crawled into the white spot. In an instant, dozens of bolts of lightning blasted down at Han Fei's face. But Han Fei was not shocked. Instead, he was delighted. He took a long breath and said, "I'm in." The old turtle said, "Why don't you find a place with slightly weaker power and let my turtle trigreen body come out?" Chapter 1664. Han Fei had experienced the lightning prison once and knew that it was an excellent place for cultivation. As long as he could withstand the lightning bombardment here, it would be excellent for body-tempering cultivation. The power of the lightning that Han Fei felt had reached the level of a peak-level advanced venerable. Perhaps the direction given by the nautical panorama was a suitable place for Han Fei to cultivate. Therefore, as soon as they came out, the old turtle wanted Han Fei to find a safer place. Han Fei also needed the old turtle's help, so he couldn't help asking, "Old Yuan, are you going to use Gui Sanqing's body in the future? It seems that its potential is not very good, right?" The old turtle said, "Before I meet the most suitable turtle clan, I can't stay here, can I? Otherwise, if I really go to the outside world, won't I be at the mercy of others? I also have a cultivation method to speed up my cultivation. In the future, when I find a turtle clan with more potential, I can possess it." The corner of Han Fei's mouth twitched. What a devil! This old turtle always wants to possess other people's bodies. However, in terms of cultivation speed, Possession was indeed the fastest. Of course, Han Fei knew that possession wasn't without any risks. Someone else's body was always someone else's body. If possession was so easy to use, then immortality would be a joke. The immortal level would be meaningless then. Half an hour later, Han Fei sent the old turtle to a place where the power of the lightning was only at the level of a beginner intermediate venerable. Bim, him. As soon as the old turtle came out, he and Han Fei were bombarded by 100 lightning bolts. The old tortoise's shell crackled with lightning. After a few seconds, the old turtle was struck back to its original form. On the turtle shell, an array appeared. Immediately afterward, many lightning bolts seemed to be attracted by the turtle shell and all struck it. The old turtle seemed to be relieved. Seeing this scene, Han Fei raised his eyelids. No wonder he was an emperor. Gui Sanqing's body was only half a venerable. It hadn't been long in the hands of the old turtle, but at this moment, it had already reached the peak level junior venerable. At this moment, the old turtle was swallowing lightning frantically. This growth speed was probably no slower than Han Fei's. Ignoring the old turtle, Han Fei said, "I'm going to cultivate. Let's talk about it when I break through to the peak." 1 month later, the thunder purgatory was nearly 20,000 li deep. There were tens of thousands of lightning bolts here, as well as spirit gathering formations that constantly appeared and disappeared like raindrops. Under the bombardment of a peak-level advanced venerable, countless electric currents surged on the surface of Han Fei's body, and his flesh scabbed and fell off again and again. The surrounding spirit-gathering arrays maintained the supply of spiritual energy for Han Fei's body to consume when he was baptized by lightning. In fact, as early as more than half a month ago, Han Fei's body had almost been repaired, and he had almost cultivated to the limit. In fact, there was a huge difference between the lightning in the lightning prison and the lightning that descended from the heavens. For example, when Han Fei deduced the void fishing art, the power of lightning, although not a heavenly tribulation, contained the power of the great path. In a sense, it was a much weaker heavenly tribulation. However, what the lightning in the thunder domain lacked was precisely the power of the great Tao that descended from the heavens. Therefore, Han Fei, who had planned to cultivate for a short time, spent a whole month cultivating. Kacha! With a cracking sound, Han Fei suddenly opened his eyes. At this moment, Han Fei felt that the power that had been accumulated in his body had a place to vent. It was as if a river had overflowed and a new channel had been opened. The power of the peak-level venerable was spreading all over his body. At this moment, although Han Fei was still bathed in lightning, his flesh, soul, and bones were transforming at the same time. In other words, at the moment when Han Fei broke through to the peak-level venerable, his flesh and blood really caught up with his soul and bones, and the three reached a balance. At this point, there was actually only one thing left for Han Fei to do, to truly unify the three. Let the flesh and blood nourish the bones, and let the soul immerse into the bones and blood. This was also the step that Ren Tianfei was taking. Boom, boom, boom. After being bombarded for a full hour, Han Fei's realm of the peak-level venerable was finally stabilized. Han Fei immediately looked at his personal information, and the information appeared in his eyes. Owner Han Fei level greater than 89, venerable. Chaotic energy, 957, spiritual power, 147211, perception range greater than 50,000 kilometers, power greater than 16,132 waves, first spiritual heritage, unknown, second spiritual heritage, unknown, first spiritual beast, twin yin-yang spirit swallowing fish, level 78. Second spiritual beast, king sparrow, level 70. Main art, void arrival, level 7 of void fishing, king level, divine quality. Phew, Han Fei's eyes flashed. Sure enough, the peak level and the peak level of an advanced venerable were two completely different concepts. His spiritual power had increased by more than 10,000, and his strength had increased by 1,500 waves. To Han Fei's surprise, maybe because he used Little Black and Little White the most and most frequently, Little Black and Little White had also leveled up by 1 level. However, this was not the point. After breaking through to the peak level venerable, Han Fei's strength had soared. If Han Fei had barely reached the level of a pseudo-king before, now, Han Fei had completely reached the level of a pseudo-king, or even stronger. Han Fei was not overjoyed. The peak-level venerable was just a matter of time. It could even be said that the fusion of flesh, blood, bones, and soul was actually something that would happen naturally when the conditions were right. Ren Tianfei said that when the three were perfectly combined, he would become a half-king. Han Fei raised his head, only to see the bolts of lightning striking down. He thought to himself, is there a better training environment than this? Why don't I take advantage of this environment to try to fuse the three? Han Fei immediately sat cross-legged in the lightning prison and let the lightning strike. When Han Fei tried to activate the power of the three, he felt that his blood was boiling, his bones were itchy, and his soul seemed to be pricked by needles. Cough, Han Fei coughed unconsciously, and blood flowed out of his mouth. Han Fei looked up at the lightning in the sky. Immediately, Han Fei took a breath and said, "This lightning is of no benefit to the last step of training?" The old turtle, who kept in touch with Han Fei, said, "The combination of the three powers is disrupted by the power of lightning. You can try. Try it in the space of your calabash." Han Fei thought to himself, that's the only way. This is related to whether I can become a half-king. If possible, I'd like to cross the two realms of a peak-level venerable and a half-king at the same time. The array he created for himself barely lasted for 2 seconds, and then Han Fei immediately entered Forge the Universe. At this moment, Forge the Universe was very cold. Only Little Black and Little White were hovering and swimming in the pool. The nine-tailed mantis shrimp and the others were all left in the corpse breeding land by Han Fei. Han Fei could only rely on his own resource reserves to cultivate. Fortunately, he kept a sun-moon shell for himself with the resources he robbed from the Zhang family. Although it was just a sun-moon shell, it was full of spiritual fruits, spiritual spring, spiritual stones, and so on. Han Fei sat cross-legged again. After a while, the feeling just now came back. His blood was boiling, his bones were itchy, and his soul seemed to be pricked by needles. That feeling was very uncomfortable. His soul was itchy and painful, making Han Fei almost unable to concentrate. However, this pain was still bearable. This time, without the interference of the lightning bombardment, Han Fei finally felt that his flesh and soul were being sucked and trembling slightly with his bones as the center. During the training, Han Fei didn't even dare to move and was fully focused. Han Fei found that his indestructible golden body was changing too. It was as if every inch of his body was being polished anew. His bones were affecting his flesh and blood with the power of his divine soul. At this time, Han Fei realized something. Once he completed this step, he would not need to consume any additional energy. Even if his body was smashed into pieces, it could be reassembled in an instant. Yes, it was a recombination, not a rebirth. There was a clear difference between this and the blood rebirth of the exalted realm. In terms of blood rebirth, every drop of his flesh and soul would be able to be reborn from a single drop of blood after he had successfully cultivated it. Unlike ordinary venerables, who needed to hide the power of blood rebirth in a wisp of their divine soul and flesh. Besides, Han Fei's body could sense each other even if they were thousands of kilometers apart. In battle, unless the opponent completely crushed his flesh and bones, he wouldn't be able to do anything. Otherwise, it would have been impossible to kill him. Of course, although this recombination ability was much stronger than blood rebirth, if he encountered an absolutely powerful enemy, he still wouldn't be able to escape. Therefore, this technique was not invincible. However, this method also guaranteed Han Fei's chance of survival. After a long time, Han Fei felt that a phalanx in his palm had a weird feeling that it could be separated from his body. Han Fei suddenly woke up. Huff! Han Fei immediately looked at his phalanx. With a thought in his mind, a piece of bone appeared on the finger of his right hand. Han Fei felt that his consciousness could be completely injected into this phalanx. At the same time, Han Fei could also feel that this seemed to be an indestructible phalanx. At this moment, the old turtle suddenly said, "It seems that you have comprehended the true meaning of seclusion." After hearing this, Han Fei was dumbfounded. "What do you mean?" The old turtle said, "This can be said to be the longest time you have been completely immersed in seclusion. For a full 3 months, your mind was completely focused on seclusion. You didn't waver at all." Puff! Swoosh! Han Fei jumped up and widened his eyes. "How long did you say it was? How long have I been cultivating?" The old turtle said leisurely, 3 months. To be precise, there are still 3 days to 3 months. Han Fei. Chapter 1665. When Han Fei heard the old turtle say that he had been in seclusion for 3 months, he was dumbfounded. He thought it would only take him half an hour at most. But it turned out that 3 months had passed? "Are you kidding me?" Han Fei said with a black face. "Old Yuan, are you sure you're not lying to me? Have I really been in seclusion for 3 months?" The old turtle said, "Of course. However, it has only been less than 6 days in the outside world." Han Fei didn't know what to do. Even if he was in Forge the Universe, so what? He had only spent 3 months honing a phalanx? It was just a phalanx, not a finger. If he wanted to completely refine all the bones in his body, how long would it take? At this rate of cultivation, it would take him 52 years to completely temper all the bones in his body. In an instant, Han Fei understood why Ren Tianfen stayed in the central holy city every day. Because this guy was tempering his bones. God knew how long he had been tempering. Logically speaking, Ren Tianfen's aptitude should be weaker than his. After all, Ren Tianfen didn't have the Emperor's path as his meridians. Even Han Fei needed 52 years to cultivate from the peak stage of the Venerable Realm to the Demi-King Realm. Then, it was conceivable that it would take other people hundreds of years to cultivate the indestructible Overlord body. Wow! Han Fei gasped and then looked at his resource consumption. His eyelids twitched. About 2% of his resources had been consumed. In order to temper a phalanx, the consumption of resources was as high as 2%? What kind of divine bone was this? Gulp. Han Fei swallowed. The last step of the indestructible body must be extremely powerful. If a phalanx required so many resources, how much would his strength increase? When Han Fei took a closer look, he found that his strength had increased by 10 waves. Yes, Han Fei was right. It took him 3 months to temper an indestructible phalanx and increase his strength by 10 waves. Han Fei's expression was strange. Was this number small? In fact, it was not small. If the strength of a small finger bone could increase his strength by 10 waves, then, when he finished tempering his entire body, his strength would increase by at least 2,000 waves. With his current strength, coupled with his 2,000 waves of strength as a foundation, his strength could almost instantly kill a strength-type demi-king. After learning this result, Han Fei was slightly surprised. Anyway, the battle in the Shuemu sky hadn't started yet. He might as well give Luo Xiaobai and the others more time. The interaction between the Yin-Yang heaven and the Wadawood heaven was definitely a process of rapid growth for the experts of both sides. Back then, when he had first arrived here, if he hadn't remembered to go through the heavenly tribulation and then wander the outer sea region, he would definitely have gone to look for the humans of the Flying Feather tribe to learn the battle bow technique. At this moment, although the resources he had on him were not enough for his own cultivation. However, he would cultivate as much as he could. Every time he finished tempering a bone, his strength would increase by 10 waves. In any case, this was also a form of improvement. Furthermore, other than an increase in strength, this indestructible finger bone definitely had other strong aspects. Therefore, delaying for a while longer was not a loss for him. Furthermore, he felt that 3 months was no more than the time it took to burn a stick of incense. Why did he have to worry about the time? He could just regard 3 months as half an hour. Thinking this through, Han Fei felt that even if he exhausted all his resources and finished the cultivation in one go, it would only take him more than 3 years, which he could afford. And so, 12 years later, about 7 months had passed in the real world, Han Fei suddenly woke up from his cultivation. For him, it seemed that only a few hours had passed. When Han Fei woke up, he was a little dumbfounded. The resources of a whole sea-swallowing seashell, plus the resources in his Forge the Universe, were not even enough to temper his 2 arms? Now, Han Fei found that one of his arms had great strength, but the other arm. No, the other arm, the palm was less than half tempered. Han Fei couldn't help but shout, "Old Yuan, how long have I been cultivating?" The old turtle howled, "Less than 8 months. Han Fei. Han Fei glanced at his information, only to find that his strength had increased by 482 waves, and there were even zeros. Wait, Han Fei was a little surprised. The power of his divine soul had also increased by nearly 3,000 points. This scene surprised Han Fei. The cultivation of the indestructible tyrant body not only didn't consume his soul power, but could also increase his soul power by so much. He didn't even visualize anything. Crack, crack, cracks. Han Fei subconsciously clenched his fists, which made a crisp sound. After moving his joints, Han Fei felt that his arm was extremely powerful. Han Fei was silent for a moment and was surprised. In the past, it consumed a lot of my soul power to fuse with my bones. Don't tell me it's the divine soul that's feeding me? Han Fei frowned, only to see that his right arm was broken, but there was no blood flowing out. He could only see the arm floating in midair, but he could still control it. Han Fei moved his fingers and clenched his fists. It felt as if the arm had never left. The body disintegration technique? How did you manage to cultivate the body disintegration technique? Your fleshly body is already strong to such an extent? The old turtle was dumbfounded. Although he knew that Han Fei was in seclusion, he didn't know what kind of seclusion Han Fei was doing. At this moment, he didn't know what Han Fei was doing. Han Fei was also puzzled. What is the body disintegration technique? The old turtle said, generally speaking, this is a great technique that can only be practiced by body refining experts. And to practice it, you need to be at least a king. Besides, not just a beginner king. You need to be a king who has been tempered many times. After practicing this technique, your body will be extremely strong and it will be extremely difficult to be killed. Han Fei raised his eyebrows. Really? I'm happy that you're talking about a king. A king can practice it? It made me think that I had obtained some great technique. In fact, Han Fei thought to himself, that's right. No matter how strong the indestructible tyrant body is, it's still a body-refining technique that belongs to the venerable realm. Can it be stronger than a king-level body-refining technique? Although he said so, Han Fei was still quite excited. At least, he had practiced the king-level technique now. When he reached the Pioneer Sea realm, he would be much stronger than other people. Han Fei left Forge the Universe and reappeared in the Thunder Prison. He had no choice. He had run out of resources and had to come out. If he had known this, he wouldn't have given all the resources to Luo Xiaobai. He thought that these resources were not very useful. He didn't think that he could break through the peak level of the Venerable Realm and the Half-King Realm in one go. It seemed that no matter what happened in the future, he would have to prepare sufficient resources on him. Instead of going to the old turtle, Han Fei took out the 9-palace ruler of Providence and slid the ruler mark. A moment later, when the ruler mark fell on the hexagram of Great Misfortune, Han Fei's lips twitched. It seemed that robbing the White Shell Royal City was a bit difficult. However, since it was a great misfortune rather than a desperate situation hexagram, it meant that he still had a chance. Han Fei couldn't help but curl his lips. It seemed that he had to move the chess pieces that he had buried. A moment later, when Han Fei found the old turtle, he found that the old turtle had moved 2,000 kilometers forward. The old turtle's strength had risen from the peak level of a beginner venerable to the mid-level venerable realm. Moreover, it wasn't the kind that had just started. It seemed like after a period of time, he would be able to finish cultivating this realm. Han Fei asked in shock, "How can you cultivate so fast?" The old turtle said, "Is it fast? My energy-swallowing secret technique is not a joke at all. It's just that Gray Sanqing's aptitude is too poor. If my main body was here, with this space, my strength would have recovered to the peak of the Venerable One long ago." Han Fei snorted. "Okay, don't show off. Let's go. I'm going to the White Shell Royal City to do something." Cough, cough, the old turtle asked in surprise. "You're going to the White Shell Royal City? How are you going there?" Han Fei's lips curled. Take a guess. In Han Fei's eyes, the Thunder Prison was a place of pure cultivation. Han Fei didn't want to go deeper. Han Fei's current goal was the White Shell Royal City. Of course, he didn't want to find trouble for himself. After a while, Han Fei came to the edge of the Thunder Prison under the guidance of the nautical panorama. The entrance to the White Shell Royal City was here. The Forbidden Land level trial field couldn't be opened until it was approved. The White Shell Royal City would only be opened when a heavenly talent requested to enter this place. He activated the Gemini Divine Technique. The probability of Han Fei being discovered when he performed the Gemini Divine Technique was very low. Unless it was the White Armor Emperor on the other side of the entrance. Otherwise, it would be hard for anyone to discover him. Even Hai Tinglei, the law enforcer of the White Shell Royal City, couldn't discover him. The black fog quietly disappeared into the entrance passage. The moment the black fog went out of the entrance, Han Fei heaved a long sigh of relief. There was no one guarding this place. It seemed that no one was guarding this place at all when no one was challenging the Forbidden Land level trial field. Han Fei looked directly at the most difficult one of the 4 Forbidden Land level secret realms of the White Shell Royal City, the Divine Demon Sea Secret Realm. Yu Tianxin once told him that the Divine Demon Sea might be connected to the Wall of Death. He said that the seal was broken and then repaired by the White Armor Emperor. A big demon tried to rush out but was directly killed by the White Armor Emperor. Since I can't break the seal of the Forbidden Land and enter the White Shell Royal City from the inside, then I'll let you open this passage by yourself. With this in mind, Han Fei directly entered the Divine Demon Sea Secret Realm without even using the Ruler of Destiny. For Han Fei, what was inside the Wall of Death? He knew it too well. With Han Fei's current strength, he could still defeat the Black Snail King. A mere Divine Demon Sea Secret Realm? What could it do to him? Chapter 1666. The Divine Demon Sea. The corresponding level of this trial ground should be the Explorer Realm. As a place personally sealed by the White Armor Emperor, it shouldn't be easy. When Han Fei crawled into the so-called Sea of Demons and Gods, he was surprised to find that this was clearly a violent sea in a cage. Yes, this violent sea was full of chaotic spiritual energy, accompanied by the invasion of the Desolation Water. Generally speaking, it was difficult to survive here unless one was an explorer. Just like in the Immortal City, an island-protecting array had to be set up on the island. Han Fei explored with his perception but didn't find the existence of any living creatures. If it were just the violent sea, it would be impossible for this place to become a forbidden land. What was slightly better here than the violent sea was that the spiritual energy here was more abundant and the energy was also more abundant. And it was about 5 times more abundant than the violent sea. Han Fei saw a lot of array patterns in this area, and to his surprise, he found that these arrays turned out to be energy-absorbing arrays similar to spirit-gathering arrays. Swish! Suddenly, Han Fei's body slightly tilted, and he felt a force brushing past him. What came into Han Fei's eyes was a space crack. However, this was obviously different from a space crack. After all, this force flashed past Han Fei. In other words, it was actively attacking Han Fei. Fuse. In the secret realm, Han Fei was not afraid of being discovered by the White Armor Emperor. However, after the fusion, Han Fei was surprised to find that in the void, there seemed to be invisible shadows emerging. Moreover, these shadows were all strangely shaped. Swish, 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 a weird mass of things suddenly jumped over, like a bolt of lightning. In Han Fei's eyes, there was a familiar smell. At this time, in front of Han Fei's eyes, several invisible shadows appeared at the same time. Around Han Fei, there were large and small space cracks, some thick and some thin. However, the power of these space cracks was not very strong. Han Fei flicked an invisible figure away with a flick of his finger. As soon as the black shadow was bounced away, Han Fei saw a big horn-like thing stabbing at him. And in the real world, it was a space crack that was instantly torn apart, slashing at Han Fei. Han Fei suddenly thought of something and asked in surprise, "Old Yuan, why do I feel that this is the way of the one-horned rhinoceros?" And just now, that thunderbolt soul-hooking claw looked a little like the thunder leopard's. As soon as he said that, he twisted his body slightly and stepped on the ground, and the coiled turtle array appeared. Clang, clang, clang. Han Fei looked back, only to find that hundreds of spatial cracks had appeared at the same time. This technique was extremely similar to the Monkey King's 3,000 strikes. Suddenly, Han Fei noticed something. This divine demon sea was most likely connected to the territory of the Monster Beast Alliance in the cage. However, for some reason, the people on the other side of the Sea of Gods and Demons seemed to be separated by an invisible spatial membrane. Both sides seemed to be able to sense each other and attack each other. It was just that they couldn't see each other. The old tortoise said, "You might have appeared in a superimposed space. It's as if someone is right next to you, and you can sense him, but you can't see him. This kind of mutual attack can only be launched through spatial rifts." Han Fei asked in surprise, "Since there's something wrong with this space, will it be broken?" The old tortoise shook his head and said, "Theoretically, it won't. It's like two pieces of fish skin stuck together. The space here is even thicker than the space in other places, and it's not easy to break through. This white armor emperor, through this superimposed space, absorbed the power of the other side of the space and turned it into his own. He's quite a talent." Han Fei's lips twitched. Talent? All he did was steal something through the space. However, Han Fei had to be cautious. He hadn't been away from the Demon Beast Alliance for long. Now, he was surprised to find that the Demon Beast Alliance and the White Shell Royal City had a superimposed space. How could he not be worried? The White Armor Emperor was a real king. If he could really break into the cage from here, who in the entire cage could be his match? So, with a thought from Han Fei, the infinity water floated out. Thousands of blades started to cut the water. On the other side, in a forbidden place between the Demon Beast Alliance and the Forest of Horrors, a group of demon beasts was yelling at this moment. A rhinoceros roared, "Oh no! Someone is here. It must be a ferocious man from the outside world. Lei Bao, hurry to the island and inform the strong masters to come here." An ape yelled, "This man is very strong. We attacked him together, but he didn't even move. It seems that we can't shake him at all." A wolf cub shouted, "Look, there are more space cracks here. Is the man on the other side trying to break the cage?" Wait. The ape yelled, and all the beasts gathered, only to find that the space cracks kept appearing and turning into a line of words in the void. It read, "Ait, the bull demon king, ask the little thunder leopard to find the old sheep. Hurry up." Immediately, the group of demon beasts was dumbfounded. The name of the bull demon king must resound like thunder in the ears. One person slaughtered 7 sea demons in a row. This was the fame he earned from killing, and it shook the entire Demon Beast Alliance. Who doesn't know? Who doesn't know? The wolf cub said, "Is he a liar? Why is the bull demon king on the other side of the cage?" The rhinoceros pondered and said, "How does he know that we have thunder leopard here? He can't see it, right?" The ape said, "If he is an outsider, he shouldn't know the sheep sovereign, right? Is it really the bull demon king?" Lei Bao said, "Forget it. I'll go back and call him. With the sheep sovereign's powerful means, he must be able to tell who this person is." Thousand Beast Island. Yang Shenji stood on the platform of the Great Rift Gorge, looking into the distance. This was Yang Shenji's habit, his ancestral habit of looking into the distance. Suddenly, a lightning mark flashed across the sky. It was the thunder leopard sovereign flying over. Xiong Chaoshui roared, "Lightning! Why are you running in your own home?" Lightning said, "Old sheep, there's news about the bull demon king. He seems to have left the cage." "What? Huh? What's going on? Lightning, tell me." "Impossible. Didn't he go to the Undying City?" Old sheep was also dumbfounded. "Why didn't I see anything?" Lightning said, "I just received news from the Space Valley. Someone has appeared in that place again. This time, it seems that the bull demon king wants to meet you, old sheep." The wild lion roared, "Impossible. Aren't they enemies in the Space Valley?" Old sheep said, "Let's go and have a look." 1 hour passed. When Yang Shenji and the group of venerables arrived at the Space Valley, Han Fei's heart skipped a beat. He saw that someone had arrived. Calculating with his fingers, Han Fei grinned, stirred the void with the infinity water, and words appeared in the cage. "Old sheep, it's me." Everyone gasped when they saw what it was. Niu Dali wrote first, "Can you see this side?" Han Fei replied, "You are Niu Dali. I can see your blurred form. If I'm not mistaken, the Wild Lion and Xiong Chaoshui are also here." The Wild Lion was about to write, when Xiong Chaoshui shouted, "Ask me how to get out." With two pa-pa sounds, the two of them were directly slapped away by the old goat. Old Sheep's eyes flickered, and after a while, he confirmed, "It's him." Xiong Chaoshui quickly said, "Then ask him how to get out? I'm so anxious." The Wild Lion roared, "Ha! It seems that there is indeed a way out of the cage. Damn, I finally don't have to stay in the cage anymore." However, in the next moment, words appeared in the void. Han Fei said, "This is a forbidden secret realm connected to the Sea Demon King city outside. There are real kings here. Remember to be careful. Besides, the fake king of the Forest of Horrors has died, and 36 venerables have died. You can try to help them." On Old Sheep's side, the others looked at each other. "Are you kidding me? If there was such a big movement in the Forest of Horrors, how could we not know?" Old Sheep's body trembled, and he secretly calculated with his fingers. After several dozen breaths of time, he finally opened his eyes. The truth. The fake king of the Forest of Horrors has indeed disappeared. "What?" Xiong Chaoshui and the others exclaimed. The reason why the four major forces could be called the four major forces was naturally that they had fake kings. However, Old Sheep continued, "However, the Forest of Horrors is easy to defend and difficult to attack. Their fake kings have never been of much use. Those half-kings are enough to give us a headache." Old Yang raised his brush and wrote, "How did you get out?" "The reason is complicated. By the way, later, I need you to do me a favor. I will lead the king of the Sea Demon King city over. I need you to confront him for a while to create an opportunity for me. Remember, stay far away. Once you attack, escape immediately. The king is invincible." Old Sheep nodded. "But, Han Fei directly put away the infinity water. Although he could chat through this place, he couldn't open the cage yet. However, he couldn't open the cage yet, so there was no point in talking anymore. Besides, he was also taking risks by stirring the void in the Divine Demon Sea. If he attracted the attention of the White Armor Emperor and was discovered by him, he wouldn't be able to escape. After Han Fei disappeared, Niu Dali frowned. She, a peak-level intermediate venerable, couldn't say anything in this matter. The Wild Lion howled, "Old Sheep, why don't you ask him how he got out?" Xiong Chaoshui also said, "Old Sheep, since you've confirmed that that person is the Bull Demon King, is it that simple?" Old Sheep said leisurely, "The reason why he left in such a hurry is that the Bull Demon King is taking the risk to talk to us. Besides, it's useless to ask him now. When we can go out without you asking. But Niu Dali, you retreat. The Wild Lion and Xiong Chaoshui stay with me. But the situation is not right. You retreat first. Let me see the Sea Demon King. First update. Asking for votes. End of this chapter. Chapter 1667. Han Fei didn't expect that he could talk to the people in the cages here. Of course, this kind of dialogue could only be carried out by those who were relatively strong. Those who were weak couldn't cut the space here through the void cracks at all, let alone cut the void cracks into the shape of words. After saying a few words to Old Goat, Han Fei stopped the communication. After all, cutting the void would also cause damage to the surrounding arrays. In the end, Han Fei sneered. What kind of place is the Divine Demon Sea? Perhaps, at the very beginning, there might really be experts in the cages who tried to escape from here. However, as the cage seal continued to strengthen, the possibility of that happening became extremely low. The Sea of Gods and Demons was indeed quite dangerous and challenging for explorers. Perhaps the White Armor Emperor used this method to cultivate when he was weak. Although they couldn't see each other through the spatial membrane, It was easy to tell whether they were friends or foes. Take Old Sheep for example. He was good at divination, so it was easy for him to tell whether they were friends or foes. Therefore, the sea demons that appeared in the divine demon sea would be beaten by countless demon beasts of the Demon Beast Alliance. When Han Fei was in the Demon Beast Alliance, he only stayed in the Life and Death Gorge except for the 10,000 Beast Island. At that time, he didn't even go to the Forest of Horrors, so he didn't know that there was a place like the Space Valley. Thinking about this strange space, Han Fei suddenly remembered a multidimensional space theory. It was said that space was actually a way of stacking cosmic strings. You might feel like you were lying on a large lawn, but it might be a busy city or a battlefield. Han Fei had to figure out a way to enter the White Shell Royal City. After chatting with Old Sheep for a while, Han Fei had already come up with a plan. He could use Old Sheep to distract the White Armor Emperor, and then he would have a chance to loot the White Shell Royal City. There were many ways to destroy the arrays. Of course, Han Fei couldn't destroy the arrays left by the White Armor Emperor himself. There was so much violent energy here that he could easily corrode 1 or 2 core arrays. When one formation was broken, it caused the other formations to become unstable, and soon after, they became broken. Therefore, he only needed to touch part of the arrays. Han Fei reached out and stirred the desolation water in this space. Han Fei kept scouring the array seal with the power of the desolation water. After only a moment, under Han Fei's deliberate action, there was a buzzing sound, and this space was shaking. Buzz! Seeing this scene, Han Fei knew it was enough. Immediately, he used the Gemini Divine Incantation, leaving only the black mist body outside. Han Fei stepped out of the Divine Demon Sea and appeared at the crossroads of the Forbidden Realms again. Sure enough, only 2 seconds after Han Fei came out, the void shook, and a man in a silver-white battle suit appeared here. It was none other than the White Armor Emperor. The White Armor Emperor didn't notice Han Fei lurking on the stone wall and stepped into the Divine Demon Sea. The next moment, with a buzzing sound, the entrance to the Forbidden Area's secret realm opened and Hai Tinglei appeared. Following closely behind Hai Tinglei were 2 high-level Venerable Realm Sea Demon powerhouses. One of them said, "Venerable Tinglei, what happened?" Hai Tinglei looked at the Divine Demon Sea ahead and said, "Our king is here. Follow me to the Divine Demon Sea." However, what Hai Tinglei didn't know was that when he led his people to the Divine Demon Sea, Han Fei had already secretly left through the forbidden entrance. Out of the trial field of the forbidden area, Han Fei could really fly freely in the vast sea like a fish leaping in the vast sky, like a bird flying freely in the sky. With a thought, Han Fei activated the nautical panorama. After a while, Han Fei found a mountain in the White Shell Royal City and an underwater crater covered by rocks and fire. There, a giant shell was nestled in the crater. As for the direction that the navigational multitude instrument was pointing at, it was pointing toward the giant shell. Han Fei cursed in his heart, "Why the fuck did you set up a blockade on your own territory?" The reason why Han Fei wanted to go to the White Shell Royal City was to plunder. Who knew that the White Armor Emperor would cover the treasure place with a layer of seal in front of his own territory? With this layer of seal, as long as Han Fei broke through, even if he robbed the White Armor Emperor's treasure house, he might be caught and killed. Just as Han Fei was hesitating, the old turtle shouted in his mind, "Turtle shell sky sealing technique." Immediately, this space was sealed. Although it seemed normal, what happened here had no connection with the outside world. The old turtle said, "Hurry up and do it." To be honest, Han Fei hadn't visited a king's cave residence yet. Now that he had such a great opportunity, he had to rob the White Armor Emperor. Han Fei was impressed by the old turtle's means and courage. The moment Lao Yuan made his move, Han Fei knocked on the heavenly gate and pierced through the seal from top to bottom. With Han Fei's current strength, he had already become the strongest person below the king level in the Yin-Yang Heaven and the Waterwood Heaven. It was true that the White Armor Emperor was powerful, but he would never have thought that someone would lure him away from his territory and rob his treasures while he was still in the city, breaking the seal with a spear, the world's end near. Han Fei was very surprised. That giant shell was still alive? Han Fei had no time to think. He turned into a white fog and quickly got into the shell. And the black fog chose to retreat as soon as possible. It wasn't until Han Fei fell into the mouth of the giant shell that he found that he had entered a small world. This small world was hundreds of kilometers wide. Han Fei was stunned by its size. In this small world, countless resources were placed in an orderly manner. There were places to store high-quality demonic stones and ultra-quality demonic stones, a large number of weapon materials, the lowest of which were high-quality divine weapons, spiritual springs. Just like in his Forge the Universe, the spiritual spring was made into a river. The spirit awakening fluid also filled a large pool, like a small lake. In addition, there were all kinds of spiritual fruits, which were well sorted and piled up into a mountain. In fact, there were many things here that the White Armor Emperor didn't need. Most of them should be used by him to reward the people below. The old turtle's first reaction was, "Hurry up, take away all that pile of demonic heritage essence. The value of this thing is comparable to the earth vein spring water. It can not only restore vitality but also contains a lot of chaotic energy. This pile must weigh millions of kilograms. Wow, it seems that there are also good things in this barbarian land." Han Fei didn't even ask what the demonic chi essence was. Wherever the old turtle pointed, he appeared with a swish and directly stuffed all the demonic chi essence into Forge the Universe. Then, ultra-quality demonic stones, high-quality demonic stones, spirit awakening fluid, divine weapon materials, spiritual springs, cultivation techniques, spiritual fruits, weapons. Anyway, Han Fei crazily stuffed everything that could be stuffed into Forge the Universe. Although Han Fei had a good time collecting, he was still speechless. The range of this 100-kilometer area was too large. Even though he was very fast, he only collected less than 1% of the resources in 100 seconds. When he saw the old turtle directly roll up countless resources with the black mist and run into Forge the Universe, Han Fei directly created a big void hand and grabbed. Han Fei also found that the old guy, the White Armor Emperor, had even cut off a large piece of the Blood Sea Divine Wood branch. Divine Demon Sea. When the White Armor Emperor appeared here, he could vaguely see a figure standing on the other side of this space with his naked eyes. This was not the first time the White Armor Emperor had met these people. It was just that from the beginning, the other party was hostile and he couldn't talk at all. He also tried to break the space here. However, even if he broke the void with his king's power, he still couldn't penetrate this world. On the contrary, he would be shocked by the void power. The White Armor Emperor had tried here for hundreds of years but failed to break a trace of the seal. However, coming here was not without any gains. In the void here, a massive amount of violent energy would continuously gush out. The more this energy was accumulated, it could even make the energy of this divine demon sea as rich as a tide. Harvesting every few hundred years was of great benefit to the realm before becoming a king. Including Hai Tinglei and Changshui Qin, they didn't know that before the White Armor Emperor became a king, he relied on the power of the divine demon sea to grow rapidly. At this moment, Hai Tinglei stood respectfully behind the White Armor Emperor and said, "My king, there seems to be someone in the depths of the void, and he is quite strong." The White Armor Emperor said lightly, "Yes. But the space of the Earth realm cannot be broken. The reason why they appeared should be because the seal is aging. It seems that I need to repair it for a while. It will be done soon." But when the White Armor Emperor repaired the array, he saw words appear in the void. "Absorb the spiritual energy of my world. Don't let me find a chance to break the seal here. Otherwise, I will kill you." This was the first time that Old Yang had taken the initiative to talk to the White Armor Emperor. They had met more than once or twice before. However, Old Yang knew clearly that the White Armor Emperor was an enemy. But the White Armor Emperor didn't know. This time, Old Yang said that he was a sea expansion realm powerhouse. The White Armor Emperor narrowed his eyes slightly when he saw the words written. Hai Tinglai's expression changed. The White Armor Emperor snorted coldly, stretched out his finger, and pointed at the void. "Then I hope you can break the seal as soon as possible." The speed of repairing the array seal was not slow. In fact, it could be said that it was very fast. It only took less than half an hour for it to be completed. In the cage, Xiong Chaoshui was still saying, "Old Yang. You're just going to say a few words and it's over? Didn't Brother Niu ask us to stall for time, so that he could do something important?" Old Yang said leisurely, "It's about time to stall for time. If we deliberately stall for time, it will only make him suspicious. Otherwise, we can only go up and fight him." "What, do you want to fight a king?" Xiong Chaoshui said, "I haven't fought before. What if I can last 2 rounds? Old Yang said lightly, "How many rounds can you last in my hands?" Xiong Chaoshui immediately scratched his head. "I think I'd better forget it. After all, it has been half an hour. It should be enough." White Shell Kingdom. The White Armor Emperor came out of the Sea of Gods and Demons and said to Hai Tinglei, "I don't know why the enemy's powerhouses have begun to pay attention to the Sea of Gods and Demons. Arrange for someone to be stationed here and go in to check every 3 to 5 days, in case of any accidents." Hai Tinglei cupped his hands. "Yes." While talking, the group of people left the Forbidden Land level trial field. As soon as the White Armor Emperor came out of the Sea of Gods and Demons, his expression suddenly changed. In an instant, he appeared above the volcano. Behind him, the giant shell appeared and closed its mouth. "How dare you? Who dares to trespass my mansion?" Second update. Asking for votes. End of this chapter. Chapter 1668. Speaking of which, Han Fei had been collecting them non-stop. At first, Han Fei collected them with the absorption ability of Forge the Universe. Then, he worked with the old turtle and grabbed them with the giant hands. Then, he simply cast the sea-quelling painting and stored them inside. After looting 90% of this place, Han Fei wondered if the White Armor Emperor was still not back yet. He had to leave now. So, Han Fei bombarded with fist marks, trying to blow the giant shell away. However, Han Fei discovered, to his shock, that his power did not cause any damage to the gigantic shell when it disappeared in this space. The old turtle said, "This is a space-type living shell? This is the big star shell." 4 void shellfish. Their way of death was the destruction of their small world or the collapse of space. They could only be crushed by space magic. Regular power doesn't work on them. "Is this the star shell? Can I take it away?" The old turtle said unhurriedly, "Yes, I can. But the premise is that you have to be outside." Han Fei didn't know what to say. "Then why did I come in when I was outside just now? I could have just taken it away." The old turtle chuckled. "How can it be so simple? At the level of the star shell, if one wanted to take it away, one would first need to grasp a certain amount of spatial techniques. That way, one would be able to grab its body from the void. Secondly, do you want to use the star shell? You'll have to make it acknowledge you as its master first. Of course, if you want to destroy it, you can detonate the rest of the spiritual spring and demonic stones here. Although it might not be enough to destroy this small world, the explosion of the enormous power can damage this small world and make it impossible for it to grow." Han Fei's lips curled. "Can a small world be damaged?" The old turtle said, "If the origin sea can be broken, why can't a small world? To be honest, it's not difficult for you to take away the star shell if you're a king. But you're not a king, so you can only rob it. Also, this star shell is not alive. It contains a bit of the White Armor Emperor's essence, blood and soul. It's just covered by my turtle shell sky sealing technique. Otherwise, the White Armor Emperor would have known it." Han Fei instantly chuckled. "You took so many things and you only blew up 1 star shell? It was inappropriate. There are so many resources here. If we're going to bomb something, let's bomb Baibei Kingdom." While collecting some scattered resources, Han Fei chatted with the old turtle. At this moment, Han Fei's black fog body had found a protective umbrella and he could leave at any time. Suddenly, the old turtle said, "The White Armor Emperor is back." With a thought, Han Fei threw out a spiritual spring and detonated it. Although Han Fei couldn't take the star shell away, there were still some leftover resources here, and he couldn't leave them to the White Armor Emperor. "I've already robbed you, so why would I leave you some?" Was this still considered a robbery? As soon as the White Armor Emperor left the forbidden area, he arrived above the star shell and broke the turtle shell sealing sky technique with one strike. In the next second, he rushed into the star shell. However, as soon as he entered, there was a loud explosion, and an illusory figure disappeared from this world. "Don't you dare leave, you thief!" Bang. Surrounding Shell Town, void barrier. Han Fei thought that he was fast enough. When the old turtle said that the White Armor Emperor was back, Han Fei only made a gesture of detonating the spiritual spring, but the White Armor Emperor caught up to him. Fortunately, the White Armor Emperor didn't really seal him at the critical moment. Bam! A deafening noise echoed in the Bai Bei Kingdom. Almost at the same time, everybody looked at the sky. The White Armor Emperor's voice echoed in the sky. "Hai Tinglei, seal the entire capital. No one is allowed to enter or leave the city." The White Armor Emperor was enraged. He only caught a glimpse of the person, but he didn't even see the person. He was a mighty monarch, yet someone had stolen countless of his treasures right under his nose, and even detonated a huge amount of resources. As a result, the star shell was in a complete mess. The remaining resources were less than 1% of the original amount. Those were the resources that he had accumulated for 10,000 years. They were gone just like that? Even if he was a king, he would have gone crazy, wouldn't he? And on the other side, Yu Kailing went through many difficulties and had several masters. Finally, with the technique left by the Fish Dragon King, she broke through the barrier of the Law Enforcer realm and reached the Explorer realm. After reaching the Explorer realm, Yu Kailing could immediately follow a new master. However, when she reached the Explorer realm, she already had a choice. She could actually go to the outside world or continue to cultivate in the royal city. For example, Lan Shuer, who was with Yu Kailing, also broke through the Explorer realm with the resources left by Han Fei. However, Lan Shuer's resources were not as good as Yu Kailing's, so she chose to continue to find a new master, and among sea demons, the existence of a master was actually a hierarchy. They could do whatever they wanted to do to you. Lan Shuer was used to it, so she didn't resist very much. Yu Kailing couldn't. She went to several masters because she refused to cooperate with them. Fortunately, she could be considered to have some talent in this realm. She wasn't very talented, but there were many people who knew Yu Kailing. At this time, Yu Kailing had basically settled down in the royal city. The death of the Fish Dragon King made Yu Kailing have no worries. As long as she cultivated slowly with the cultivation method left by the Fish Dragon King, she might not be able to become a venerable, but it was entirely possible for her to reach the peak of the Explorer realm or even the semi-venerable realm. At this moment, Yu Kailing had just returned home from the trial field, and Lan Shuer came to visit her. Yu Kailing wondered, "Shuer, didn't you go to the trial?" Lan Shuer laughed and said, "Sister Kai Ling, all you know is to cultivate. Actually, sometimes, it's a good choice to be flexible. I'm here to tell you that I'm about to break through to the intermediate Explorer realm." Yu Kailing looked at Lan Shuer in shock and said, "So fast?" Yu Kailing smiled charmingly and said, "You know, my master explored a secret realm half a month ago and got a lot of benefits. He gave me some, and the effect was excellent." Yu Kailing narrowed her eyes and said, "Humph, your master is not a good person either." Yu Kailing exclaimed and said, "Sister Kailing, men can only think so much. In fact, we are not very good looking. If we don't try our best to improve ourselves, it will be very difficult for us to rise. I heard that the front line has started fighting again. A new human race has appeared at the Cloud Sea Divine Tree, a kind of ugly human race. The war has started again, and my master may have to go to war with the army. It will be much better to be with a prodigy than to go to the front line alone." Yu Kailing said, "I heard. But we haven't recruited any soldiers yet, right? I'm going to continue the trial." Sigh. Lan Shuer heaved a long sigh. "Sister Kailing, you are actually a little stubborn. If you can sacrifice your beauty or something with your talent, you will definitely grow much faster than me." Yu Kailing said, "Got it? Go back. I'll think about it." After Lan Shuer walked away, Yu Kailing looked quietly in the direction that Lan Shuer left. After a while, she slowly exhaled, shook her head, and went back to cultivate. Boom, a loud explosion resounded throughout the entire White Bell's royal city. Then, the White Armor Emperor's angry voice spread everywhere. Hai Tinglei, immediately seal the entire royal city. No one is allowed to enter or leave the city. For a moment, countless people raised their eyebrows. Then, the White Shell royal city shook violently and didn't stop until hundreds of seconds later. Yukaling, like most ordinary people, went out to watch. Someone exclaimed, "Hiss! This is the voice of our king. What exactly happened to make my king so angry?" Someone was appalled. "Be careful in the royal city. The law enforcer is sealing the city. He must be searching for something, right? Be careful and don't get yourselves caught." Someone sneered. "Who cares what happened? What does it have to do with nobodies like us?" Yukaling didn't know that a shadow was lurking in the shadow in a corner of her residence. The old turtle said, "This chess piece is still alive. I have to say that you're quite lucky." Han Fei replied, "You don't understand the sorrow of the nobodies. In order to become stronger, in order to rise, once they survive, they will do anything to survive. So, I don't think it's surprising that they survived these trials in White Shell Royal City." Then Han Fei said, "Old Yuan, the noise this time wasn't very loud. The explosion didn't break the star shell." The old turtle was lost for words. "That's because you took away too many resources. Otherwise, the star shell would have been damaged." Han Fei grinned. "That's fine. I haven't left the White Shell Royal City yet, have I? I'll detonate it again." The old turtle really didn't know what to say to Han Fei anymore. What a bold and daring man. Resources were not money, and he could spend as much as he wanted. He heard the old turtle say, "When will this chess piece be moved?" Han Fei thought for a moment and said, "Let's wait. It's best that she doesn't know anything right now. I can cultivate for a few days while they search the royal city. I can come out when the heat is over. Old Yuan, keep an eye on Yukaling for me. Also, if the White Armor Emperor loosens up on this matter, tell me. Please vote for me." End of this chapter. Chapter 1669. The search in Baibei Royal City lasted for 3 whole months. Han Fei was speechless. This White Armor Emperor was even more persistent than a human being. But then again, the house of a dignified king tier had been emptied by you. How could he not be stubborn? Even a minor character like Yukaling had been interrogated 3 times during this search, and her residence had also been swept clean. The old turtle even said that the White Armor Emperor removed the seals on everyone's residences and searched dozens of times. Han Fei felt lucky. Thanks to the demon purification pot, even a king couldn't find him. In a situation where even Yukaling didn't know he was hiding here, no one would be able to find him. Han Fei was still cultivating peacefully, but outside, the war between the Cloud Sea Divine Tree and the Baibei Royal City was in full swing. It had been almost 5 months since Han Fei left the Cloud Sea Divine Tree, and the people of the Yin-Yang Heaven gradually got used to the lifestyle in the Cloud Sea Divine Tree. As soon as they went out, everyone used the teleportation array. Looking at the coordinates on the teleportation array, they could know the direction. The Yin-Yang Heavenly Human Clan was now involved in the 4 battlefields. Under Luo Xiaobai's deliberate arrangement, the human experts led the human hidden fishers to rotate battlefields one by one. At the same time, while learning the combat skills of the Waterwood Heaven, the Yin-Yang Heaven also provided them with combat skills and cooperation skills. In Luo Xiaobai's view, the human beings on the Cloud Sea Divine Tree's side were relatively uncooperative. Even though the people here also had the 5 major professions of cultivation, perhaps because they had lived with other races for too long, they were a little unfamiliar with this kind of teamwork battle. During this period, the Yin-Yang Heaven and the Waterwood Heaven also had an exchange battle. From hidden fishers to explorers, they competed in the arena. In the end, a surprising result came out. The Yin-Yang Heaven won the competition of all realms. Especially the law enforcers and explorers, the human race's combat power was completely revealed. Different from the humans of the Yin-Yang Heaven, although there were 4 battlefields, they still had the Life Queen and the Cloud Sea Divine Tree. However, those people on the Scattered Stars Island only had 1 island. Only by defending could they survive. If they couldn't defend, they would all die together. Therefore, the Yin-Yang Heavens people fought until the end, trading injury for injury. Their fearless fighting style moved many people from the waterwood heaven. It wasn't that there weren't any experts in the Shuemu sky, but that the living environments of the two sides were different. The Yin-Yang Heavens fighting style was even fiercer and crazier. Not only that, on the human side, the disciples of the Thug Academy also participated in the arena battle. In addition, a large group of descendants of aristocratic families grew up with a mountain of resources. Moreover, there was another very important point. Those who participated in the challenge tournament were basically the top prodigies of the aristocratic families and the 7 major sections. These people were the elites of the elites. If they lost, they would not be valued by the school and Han Fei. They would probably be scolded to death. This kind of battle run-in lasted for more than 3 months. In just over 3 months, the powerhouses of the Yin-Yang Sky had appeared at any of the 4 battlefields. On the battlefield, the Yin-Yang Sky warriors were really going all out. The resources of Shuemu Sky were simply too abundant. In terms of spiritual qi, it was nearly twice as dense as the Yin-Yang Heaven. Moreover, as long as he killed an enemy on the battlefield, all the spoils would belong to him. This was different from the Scattered Stars Island. After all, the discipline of the Scattered Stars Island was stronger. Although the spoils of war weren't handed over, they could still be exchanged for the resources they needed. The cost could be imagined. In the Shuemu Sky, however, everything was much more free. After all, there were more races here. Many people went to the market to exchange for various resources after they got something. The 4 major races of the Shuemu Sky, those insects, and the Sky Clan, had accumulated a lot of things. Therefore, on the streets, the people of the Yin-Yang Heavens simply entered a shopping paradise. What? Want to forge weapons but don't have the materials? Exchange with the insects. What? Lack of spiritual fruits? Exchange with the demonic plant clan. What? Feel that your combat skills aren't enough? Exchange with the humans of the Shuemu Sky. The troops of the Yin-Yang Heaven mainly came from the Scattered Stars Island, the 1,000-Star City, and the 36 towns. Those from the Scattered Stars Island also habitually went to the logistics division to exchange for resources. Over the years, the resources in the sea had been decreasing, and they couldn't go to sea at will. Therefore, in terms of obtaining resources, the channels were actually very narrow. As for the cultivators of the 1,000-Star City and the 36 towns, they either went to the 1,000-Star Proving Ground or were frequent visitors to the Level 3 fishery. Ordinary cultivators of the 1,000-Star City rarely obtained the qualification to go to the Star Bead Small World. Even the children of the big clans had very few opportunities. And how many resources could ordinary cultivators of the 36 towns obtain in places like the Level 3 fishery? Therefore, when they came to the Shuemu Sky, these people could be said to be like fish in water. The dark battlefield port, the most dangerous place in the Shuemu Sky, was the place where the children of the big clans used to live. As the saying goes, the skilled are bold. Some heavenly talents could do whatever they wanted here. The Sea of Flames had always been a place of challenge, and it was almost occupied by the heavenly talents of the 7 major sections. Especially a young swordsman from the Heavenly Sword sect, who fought 10 alone. Ever since the people of the Yin-Yang Heaven came, the sea demons of the same realm finally realized that these Yin-Yang heavenly humans were indeed very powerful. The humans of the Shuemu Sky also completely accepted the humans of the Yin-Yang Heaven. Sometimes the bugs couldn't help but sigh. The Yin-Yang heavenly humans were really powerful in the same realm. For example, in a challenge in the Sea of Flames, a human of the Yin-Yang Heaven was locked in a fierce battle with a sea demon. In the end, the human was defeated. His body was pierced and his legs were cut off. Under such circumstances, the human hugged the sea demon and self-detonated. This scene was very shocking. This touching scene completely won the respect of the major clans of the Shuemu Sky. The Shuemu Sky also had something worthy of praise. The Shuemu Sky's bout techniques were very powerful. The combat skills of the major clans were also very strange and difficult to guard against. Also, perhaps because they had been nourished by more spiritual energy, the speed of the Shuemu Sky people was generally faster. Therefore, this time, the joint battle between the two sides directly ignited the flames of battle. The Baibei royal city constantly exerted pressure on the front line. At first, the Baibei royal city sent 3,000 law enforcers and 100,000 hidden fishers. However, the sea demons didn't take the initiative to attack. After all, they found that since the people of the Yin-Yang heaven came, the battle had intensified. Some sea demons were even speechless. These animals were too fucking good at fighting. Some conflicts between the two sides were mostly at the level of testing. The sea demons also wanted to know how many humans of the Yin-Yang heaven had come. In fact, the Shuemu Sky had countless experts. The 250,000 soldiers of the Yin-Yang heaven were scattered on various battlefields, so the increase in the number of people wasn't significant. However, this didn't stop the Baibei royal city from testing the waters. They set up small battlefields again and again, trying to test the strength of the Cloud Sea Divine Tree, to see how many humans of the Yin-Yang heaven had come as reinforcements. How exaggerated was it? The Flying Feather Tribe. Wushang Shui contacted Luo Xiaobai. The Baibei royal city is provoking us everywhere. Should we respond? Luo Xiaobai shook her head. No. This kind of probing had no meaning in the final battle. Slow down the pace of the battle and use a year to nibble away these people. Wushang Shui was surprised. Then you won't be able to show the power of the Yin-Yang heaven human race. Maybe it will enhance the momentum of the Baibei royal city's army. Luo Xiaobai said lightly, momentum can be built up, but it will also dissipate quickly. Now is not the time to start a large-scale war. We still have to wait. Wushang Shui asked, wait for what? Wait for Han Fei to take action? Wushang Shui had already known that the body that Han Fei had left was just a projection clone. As for this clone, he had not participated in the battle the entire time. He had been sitting cross-legged the entire time. 1 year later, Han Fei had been cultivating in Forge the Universe for 20 years. He once wanted to consume all the chaotic energy. However, when he thought that the chaotic energy might be of great help to the breakthrough of the King Realm, he held back. Now, Han Fei was not in a hurry at all. If he didn't start a war, the people of the Yin-Yang heaven could communicate more in the Shuemu Sky. In this way, it could also promote the cultural intersection of the two worlds. Han Fei didn't need much time. He only needed another year or so. Now, Han Fei's arms had been tempered, and one of his legs was about to be tempered. This speed could be said to be extremely fast, and he didn't know how much energy he had consumed. Almost 10% of the energy-type resources that he looted from the White Armor Emperor had been consumed. After about 3 months in the outside world, the front line finally asked for reinforcements from the White Armor Emperor again. Last time, the White Armor Emperor sent reinforcements. Han Fei clearly knew that everyone was seen through by the White Armor Emperor. Yes, the White Armor Emperor didn't believe that anyone could escape from the White Armor Emperor in such a short time. He believed that the person who stole him was still in the capital. Therefore, Luo Xiaobai and the others thought that the probing army was an army to test the power of the Yin-Yang heaven. But Han Fei knew that the White Armor Emperor was tempting him to leave. Although if he really left, the White Armor Emperor might not be able to find out, Han Fei didn't have to gamble. Wouldn't it be better to wait until he reached the Half-King realm? On this day, after Yu Keiling returned from the trial, Lan Shui came to visit again. Lan Shui said, Sister Keiling, I heard that you are going to the front line to kill enemies? Yu Keiling nodded. I feel that my strength has greatly improved, and I need to stimulate it in actual combat to make a breakthrough in my realm. This time, I heard that 300 explorers, 5,000 law enforcers, and 200,000 soldiers will be selected. So, every explorer is very important. I can give it a try. Lan Shui immediately said, Sister Keiling, do you know the situation in the front line? The last batch of people who went there were almost all killed. This time, although the number of soldiers was doubled and there were more than 200 explorers, but the previous time, it only took them a year to defeat all of them. This time, I'm afraid it won't be any better. right? Yu Kaling smiled faintly. Shue, I'm different from you. People like us have to take a gamble. After Lan Shue left, Yu Kaling was about to eliminate the distractions and enter the state of cultivation. Suddenly, a voice sounded in her ear. Yu Kaling, you'll die if you go there. You'd better stay. Yu Kaling was shocked and wanted to shout, but she felt that her soul trembled, and she seemed to be mute and couldn't speak. Hee, don't make any unnecessary movements. Stay in the state of cultivation. I can feel your mental fluctuations. Who are you? After the shock, Yu Kaling quickly responded. Han Fei grinned and said, Me? I'm the Fish Dragon King. Why don't you remember? Your and Lan Shue's blood essence is still in my hands. Yu Kaling's pupils constricted. Didn't you die? Han Fei imitated the Fish Dragon King's tone and said, Died? How could this Dragon King die so easily? That was just a show put on by this Dragon King. Yu Kaling was shocked. At the same time, there was a sense of despair. The Fish Dragon King was not dead, so she was not free. What should she do? As if knowing what Yu Kaling was thinking, Han Fei laughed. Yu Kaling, don't say that I didn't help you. I can help you break through. But in the following time, you need to tell others that you are going to cultivate in seclusion to break through. Yu Kaling was not stupid. How could the Fish Dragon King be so good? Besides, the Fish Dragon King suddenly appeared and was so secretive. Did he do something? At this point, Yu Kaling was shocked. Could it be? The person Lord King is looking for is the Fish Dragon King? What did he do? How could he make Lord King so angry? First update. Asking for votes. End of this chapter. Chapter 1670. Han Fei's sudden appearance disrupted Yu Kaling's original plan. Yu Kaling didn't know that Han Fei was the Fish Dragon King. She just felt that the Fish Dragon King was not dead. This situation was very strange. Even if the Fish Dragon King pretended to be dead, what was his purpose? Why did he come to her at this time? Was it just to help her break through? Sure enough, Han Fei said, I don't care what you are going to do in the future, but in the next 2 years, you must announce to the public that you are in seclusion. Yu Kaling said, Master Dragon King, you should know that no matter what reason I have, unless I go out to fight, I must go to the trial field every month, right? If I don't go to the trial field in 4 months, it will be regarded as challenging the forbidden trial field. At that time, it will be mandatory. Han Fei thought to himself, damn it, how could I forget this part? It was because I didn't know this that I entered the forbidden trial field. Han Fei's heart did a flip. Of course I know. By seclusion, I mean except for the trial field. You must be in seclusion all the time. In order to avoid some problems, I will do something to you. Yu Kaling felt that a massive soul had drilled into her head. Although she wanted to resist it with her soul power, she couldn't do anything in the face of that terrifying soul. Yu Kaling was horrified. Master Dragon King, what are you doing? Han Fei said lightly, as long as you are obedient, I will not only guarantee that you will make a breakthrough within 2 years, but also give you a batch of resources for your cultivation. Yu Kaling asked, Master Dragon King, what do you want to do? Han Fei said, you don't need to know what I want to do. You only need to know that no matter what I want to do, the only thing you can do is to obey. Otherwise, you will die. What could Yu Kaling do? At this moment, she had no choice at all. Other than being obedient, he was just being obedient. She was sure that the strange soul in her mind could easily control her and even kill her. Therefore, the secret that the Fish Dragon King was not dead and was still hiding in her mansion. She couldn't tell anyone. Yu Kaling's seclusion probably meant that the only person she cared about was Lan Shuer. During this period, Lan Shuer came once. Yu Kaling said that she felt that she was about to make a breakthrough, so she probably couldn't go to the front lines to fight. He needed to complete his breakthrough before considering going to the front lines. Although Lan Shuer was a little confused, she did not suspect anything. After all, she was too familiar with Yu Kaling. Back then, among the group of people in the Ice God Gorge, only he and Yu Kai were left. Therefore, she especially cherished this friendship. 20 days after Yu Kaling went into seclusion, the second batch of soldiers left Baibei Royal City. One day, the old turtle said, "That white armor emperor still hasn't given up. Everyone who went out today was personally inspected by him. Although you shouldn't be afraid of being seen by him, this person's thoughts can be considered meticulous." Han Fei said with a smile, "Good boy, so what if he's on guard? Even if I finish cultivating, do you think I plan to leave?" The old turtle. Another year later, it was said that the White Shell capital city and the Cloud Sea Divine Tree had engaged in 3 large-scale battles. Altogether, 7 or 8 venerables from both sides had perished. As for the explorers, more than 300 of them had died. Hundreds of thousands of ordinary soldiers had died. In the 9th month of Han Fei's seclusion here, the White Shell capital city relaxed the conditions for entering the White Shell capital city. In addition, a large number of law enforcers and explorers were brought back from the sea. Obviously, the White Shell capital city did not expect that the Cloud Sea Divine Tree would fight so hard this time. The frontline army was fighting fiercely, and the second batch of combat forces from the White Shell capital city had lost more than half. This finally made the White Armor Emperor feel distressed. And now, Han Fei was refining his spine. In Forge the Universe, 30% of the White Armor Emperor's energy resources had been consumed. Han Fei still had a head that hadn't been tempered, and there were still 7 vertebrae that hadn't been tempered. At this moment, the White Armor Emperor seemed to have given up looking for Han Fei. With the old turtle's soul power, he found some news. And this news was that the White Armor Emperor was preparing to launch a super war. Generally speaking, every 1,000 years, the White Shell capital city and the Cloud Sea Divine Tree would launch a war, mainly to show the strength of both sides. Then, they would prove that they were still the overlords of their respective waters and the strongest enemy of the other party. This time, the White Armor Emperor was going to mobilize more than half of the White Shell capital city's manpower at once. Almost all the venerables were going to attack. The White Armor Emperor wanted to see for himself why the Cloud Sea Divine Tree had become stronger and stronger in the past 2 years. If they launched a war, some people might die. However, both sides were afraid that too many strong masters would die. Therefore, as long as they fought to a certain extent, they would stop for the time being. This time, the White Armor Emperor also had the same idea. Perhaps, the Life Queen just wanted to see how her injuries were recovering now? Besides, the White Armor Emperor was also wondering if the person who sneaked into the White Shell capital city had anything to do with the Life Queen. Or, was that person related to the people on the other side of the Sea of Gods and Demons? This time, the number of people participating in the war was even more, and it was no longer voluntary. Yu Kaling was selected to participate in the war. After only 2 months of preparation, the whole army was ready to set off. However, there were still 11 skulls in Han Fei's body that hadn't been tempered. This made Han Fei very worried. He knew that he had to take action. Although he was still a little bit away from becoming a half-king, compared to this Millennium War, he absolutely couldn't let these people really go all out. Han Fei knew that in every Millennium War, at least a dozen venerables would die. They wouldn't stop. And even then, venerable-level powerhouses died. Because of the restraint of the kings, the number of venerables who died was relatively small. As for the death of ordinary powerhouses, the White Armor Emperor didn't care at all. Thus, the number of people who perished was innumerable. Han Fei still remembered that Xu Xiaoman once told him that there was a war that broke out, and nearly 1 million insects died because of a sneak attack by a strong powerhouse. The Water and Wood Heavenly Insect Queens suffered great losses, and the overall strength of the insect clan directly dropped by several realms. Han Fei pondered. A total of 250,000 people from the Yin-Yang Heaven came. In a war of this level, if they really fought, even if they didn't lose 100,000 people, they would lose at least 70 to 80,000. But these people were all seeded players of the Yin-Yang Heaven. 70 to 80,000 people died? Han Fei couldn't accept this at all. So, Han Fei came out of seclusion. The old turtle said, "You are still in the capital. If you take action now, the White Armor Emperor will definitely seal the capital again." At that time, He won't let you go even if you have to risk your life. Han Fei grinned and said, "It doesn't matter. As long as he can't catch me, so what if I'm trapped here? This is a war between races. I'm on the side of the human race and the sea demons are my natural enemies. If the White Armor Emperor wants to fight, he has to ask me first." On this day, Chang Shuiqin personally presided over the battle, Hai Tinglei supervised the battle, and the two demi-kings of the White Shell Royal City sent troops at the same time. Hai Tinglei ordered, "All participants of the White Shell Royal City, gather outside the sky trial field within half an hour. Anyone who disobeys the order will be executed." The sky trial field was located above the White Shell Royal City and was basically always guarded by sea demon beasts. Under Hai Tinglei's order, the entire White Shell Royal City was filled with people, and water streaks cut through the bottom of the sea, rushing to the trial field. Yu Kailing said, "Master Dragon King, I have to go. Otherwise, someone will definitely notice that something is wrong." Han Fei smiled. "Wait a minute." Yu Kailing was shocked. "What does the Fish Dragon King want to do?" Yu Kailing asked. "Master Dragon King, what do you want to do?" Han Fei grinned. "Half an hour is still early. It's not even half an hour yet. What's the hurry? We can go after half an hour." In a moment, as many as 50,000 people had gathered outside the sky trial field within half an hour. There were only 100,000 people in the entire White Shell Royal City. Now, 50,000 people had gathered. What did that mean? These 50,000 soldiers were more than 10 times stronger than the previous time. Even now, there were still people on their way. One after another, more than 10,000 people came. This was also the number of troops sent by the White Shell Royal City this time. The reason why they didn't send all of them was that they were afraid that someone would sneak attack them. A strong master must have such worries. Of course, it didn't matter if the White Armor Emperor didn't care. If he was like Xue Fan, who could sacrifice the entire Blood Sea Divine Wood City in order to become a king. If he had this courage, the Cloud Sea Divine Tree would have been broken long ago. Suddenly Han Fei said, "Go. Find Lan Shuer. Don't blame me for not reminding you. Try to get close to the strong masters." Yu Kailing was dumbfounded, but she didn't think much. She guessed that no matter how strong Han Fei was, he was only a demi-venerable at this moment, and it was impossible for him to be faster. No one could break through to the venerable realm in just a few years. Besides, even if Han Fei broke through to the venerable realm, so what? A mere venerable couldn't shake so many venerables of the White Shell Royal City. Besides, there was a king here. Han Fei couldn't do anything, could he? After a while, Yu Kailing found Lan Shuer. When he saw Yu Kailing, Lan Shuer's master, a handsome half-mermaid, grinned and said, "You actually made a breakthrough with your own strength? Not bad. However, Yu Kailing, you'd better stay with me this time. This is the Millennium Battle. Without my protection, you'd better not be sent out to fight in the arena." Yu Kailing frowned and remembered Han Fei's words in her heart. Stay close to the strong masters. And here, there happened to be a venerable standing in front of a group of heavenly talents. Yu Kailing grunted softly, which made Lan Shuer raise her eyebrows. Has Yu Kailing changed her personality? Lan Shuer's master was also stunned, but then he licked the corner of his mouth and thought to himself, these women from outside are really afraid of death. If it weren't for the Millennium Battle, I'm afraid I wouldn't have been able to defeat this woman. A giant shell appeared in the sky. The White Armor Emperor stood on the giant shell, his hands behind his back. He said, "Soldiers of the royal city? Soldiers are trained for 1,000 days and used in one day. The Millennium Battle is close at hand. In this battle, some people will rise and some will fall. This is a test for your month-by-month trial. In this battle, if you survive, it will be the pride of your life." Everyone. The White Armor Emperor suddenly lowered his head, and there was a slight space vibration. However, in the past 2 years, the White Armor Emperor had been extremely vigilant. Who dared to break the void when he was giving a speech? When the White Armor Emperor looked down, he saw a familiar face, who had appeared in the crowd at some point. Han Fei? However, Han Fei raised his head and grinned at the White Armor Emperor. Bam. Second update. Please vote. End of this chapter. Chapter 1671. In Rumble, Han Fei's appearance made the White Armor Emperor realize that something was wrong. He controlled the field with the Great Tao, ready to control Han Fei in an instant. However, in all directions, dozens of Han Fei suddenly appeared. The moment Han Fei grinned, countless people felt that a crisis was coming. It was as if the god of death was calling. Only a small number of powerful people knew to mobilize all their strength to resist and defend. And most people didn't even have time to react. Boom, boom, dozens of earth-shaking roars burst out in a row, including those who had planned to stay in the White Shell Royal City. Han Fei had already prepared the void descent technique, so he naturally wouldn't let go of those places that were almost empty. Han Fei felt that since he had destroyed the White Shell Royal City, he couldn't let go of half of the rubble that was intact. The White Armor Emperor's speed was very fast. He suppressed all directions with one shell. He blocked the three figures of Han Fei. However, there were still some who were a little far away, so he couldn't make it in time. The terrifying explosion instantly swept across the White Shell Royal City. Because this explosion came too fast. Hai Tinglei and Changshui Qin only had time to protect some people. Most of the venerables could protect even fewer people. Rumble, the entire sea surface was bulging. God knew how many resources Han Fei had exploded. Anyway, about half of the energy resources in the White Armor Emperor's shell had been exploded by Han Fei. And there were still about 10% of the resources left on Han Fei. This 10% was enough for Han Fei to temper to the Half-King realm. Resources. Both left and right were for use. Although this explosion didn't use the resources on himself, it saved the lives of hundreds of thousands of people from the Shuemu Heaven and the Yinyang Heaven. Otherwise, if these experts were to rush over to Shuemu Heaven's side and really start the battle of 1,000 years, who knew how many people would die? The White Armor Emperor's shell flew across the sky, resisting most of the explosive power with its own strength. The shell swallowed nearly half of the explosive power. However, there were too many resources exploded. The moment he saw Han Fei, the White Armor Emperor knew that all of this was Han Fei's doing. His treasure house was also stolen by Han Fei. However, the White Armor Emperor was shocked. Didn't Han Fei die in Xue Fan's heavenly tribulation? How could he still be alive? Unfortunately, he had no time to think about it now. He had led his troops out, but at this moment, Baibei Royal City had been destroyed. Almost half of the elite army of 100,000 soldiers were killed in an instant. In this explosion, even a few of Han Fei's clones failed to detonate and shake the surrounding area. However, they had also wiped out the White Shell Kingdom's army of more than 30,000 to nearly 40,000 soldiers. These more than 30,000 sea demons were not hidden fishers. In the Baibei Royal City, there were no sea demons at the level of hidden fisher. Some of them were at least at the law enforcer realm. Han Fei thought that he could at least annihilate the 50,000 troops of the White Armor Emperor. But now it seemed that he was still a little short. At that moment, even a king like the White Armor Emperor was a little dazed, let alone the others. For a moment, countless people couldn't even cry out in pain. That was because they were directly crushed by the terrifying power. In an instant, they were completely destroyed. Tens of thousands of people were seriously injured by the explosion. Fortunately, this time, the White Armor Emperor almost took most of the venerables with him. The three half-kings took action together, and nearly 80 venerables and hundreds of half-venerables took action at the same time to protect half of the troops of the White Shell Kingdom. Yu Kailing was dumbfounded. Although she was protected by the venerables, she still hit the bottom of the sea heavily. After getting up, looking at the sea demons around her who had similar expressions as her, Yu Kailing was relieved. Just now, she failed to control her expression and almost exposed herself. She knew that this explosion was caused by the Fish Dragon King, and she was more certain that the Fish Dragon King might be the person the White Armor Emperor was looking for. Besides, such an explosion felt very familiar to her. When she was in the Ice God Gorge, she seemed to have encountered such an explosion. At that moment, Yukaling had a great suspicion about the identity of the Fish Dragon King. It seemed that after returning from the Thousand Mountain ancient realm, the Fish Dragon King had changed. At that time, she told herself several times that maybe this was the real Fish Dragon King, and the previous ones were all illusions. But now, Yukaling was almost certain that this Fish Dragon King was fake. From the time in the Thousand Mountain ancient realm, it was already fake. She had reason to suspect that the Fish Dragon King had been possessed in the Thousand Mountain ancient realm. Unfortunately, she didn't recognize it at that time, and now she regretted it. Seeing so many people die, Yukaling's mind went blank. Tears uncontrollably flowed down her cheeks. Why was she so afraid of death? Was he the one who caused all of this? If she hadn't cooperated with the Fish Dragon King from the beginning, would there have been no such explosion? The White Armor Emperor took action immediately. Unfortunately, dozens of Han Fei's clones suddenly descended and all detonated. Unfortunately, none of them was Han Fei's real body. If Han Fei was right in front of her, why couldn't she recognize Han Fei? Oh! The White Armor Emperor roared, "Everyone, stand where you are and let me examine you one by one." Han Fei hid in Forge the Universe and didn't come out. In Forge the Universe, Han Fei said, "Old Yuan, deprive Yukaling of her memories in the past year." The old turtle said, "Why? Do you still want to use her now?" Han Fei said, "Although she is an enemy, this woman has a good character. I used her because when two armies confront each other, they will do anything. But now she has been used. Even if I want to kill her in the future, I will do it on the battlefield." The old turtle said, "The noise here is too big. The Shuemu Heaven will definitely take action. Will anyone come to save you?" There were only 100,000 people in the White Shell Kingdom, excluding those who had gone to the battle and those who had just been killed by Han Fei. Now there were only 50,000 people left. The White Armor Emperor was exasperated to the extreme. If he wanted to investigate them one by one. In fact, it wouldn't take long. If he could find Han Fei by interrogating them one by one. The White Armor Emperor was willing to give it a try. On the other side, on the Cloud Sea Divine Tree, the half-projection left by Han Fei suddenly jumped up from sitting cross-legged and shouted, "All armies, go to war." Old Jiang was taken aback. "What the hell? Did you just come back to life?" Old Jiang asked, "What happened? What do you mean by all armies going to war?" Han Fei said, "Old Jiang, trust me. Although I can't feel the specific situation of my real body, I can feel that now it's time for the whole army to go to war." Old Jiang's face turned serious. He probably knew that something must have happened to Han Fei's real body. He immediately said, "I'll inform Xiaobai and the Ancestral Patriarch. You go find tranquility." In the Waterwood Divine Palace, the Life Queen, who was watering the flowers, suddenly raised her head and looked at the distant territory. The next moment, the Life Queen disappeared from the Divine Palace. Of course, the Life Queen felt such a violent shock. However, a moment later, when the Life Queen was more than 800,000 kilometers away from the White Shell Kingdom, she felt the faint shock waves coming from the void and saw the terrifying scene where the White Shell Kingdom was located. She couldn't help but be shocked. The Life Queen directly returned to the Shuemu Heaven. She didn't know Han Fei's situation. However, this was obviously not a good time to save him. Besides, she didn't feel that Han Fei had released Tranquility and the Venerable Token. If Han Fei was really in danger, she would at least know this. Therefore, the Life Queen returned to the Shuemu Heaven as soon as possible. After a moment, Luo Xiaobai had just heard the news from Old Jiang when she heard the Life Queen's voice from the Cloud Sea Divine Tree. The 72 Venerables of the Shuemu Heaven, attack quickly and prepare for a full-scale attack. Luo Xiaobai and Old Jiang suddenly raised their heads and were stunned by the Life Queen's voice. But in the next moment, a phantom of the Life Queen appeared directly in front of Luo Xiaobai. "It's time to ask the people of the Yin-Yang Heaven to attack. Now is the time for war." Although Luo Xiaobai knew that the most important thing now was to organize the army, she still asked, "Your Majesty, what happened?" The Life Queen said leisurely, "Han Fei blew up the White Shell Kingdom." Luo Xiaobai, old Jiang, everyone. Luo Xiaobai's head was buzzing. What did she mean by Han Fei blew up the White Shell Kingdom? Was it a joke? If the White Shell Kingdom could have been blown up, why would they still fight this war? However, reason made Luo Xiaobai quickly come back to herself, and she quickly asked, "Your Majesty, is Han Fei in danger? Do we need to rescue him?" Yes, Luo Xiaobai asked the second time-wasting question. At that time, the Life Queen shook her head. He shouldn't be in danger for the time being. Even if he is, there's nothing you can do. Now launch a full-scale battle and kill the sea demons on the periphery of the Shuemu heaven. Only then can the White Shell Kingdom be forced to send help. Luo Xiaobai nodded. Understood. Thank you, Your Majesty. Luo Xiaobai bowed and turned around. Ancestor, please inform all the venerables of the Yin-Yang heaven that we will begin to organize the army in the Dark War port. The voice of Saya was heard saying leisurely, "Leave it to me." A great war was about to break out, but Han Fei hid in Forge the Universe and focused on cultivation. He was only 11 bones away from becoming a demi-king. His whole body had been tempered, and now only his head was left. The demi-king realm was close at hand. As long as the White Armor Emperor didn't come out, he would cultivate. But Han Fei didn't know that people could go crazy, and sometimes kings. The White Armor Emperor was now on the verge of going crazy. The third update. Please vote for me. End of this chapter. Chapter 1672. Waterwood Heaven. The 4 clans of the Cloud Sea Divine Tree launched a general attack at the same time. At this moment, the Life Queen slaughtered the 6 sea demon venerables of the Dark War port alone, causing the Great Tao to crack and blood to pour down. All 72 Cloud Sea Divine Tree venerables launched attacks on the 4 battlefields at the same time. However, venerables were much weaker than kings after all. Except for the Dark War port, only 4 venerables died on the 3 battlefields. One of them was killed by the Thug Patriarch. By this time, the ultimate battle had been single-handedly led by the Cloud Sea Divine Tree's side. Therefore, the Life Queen didn't hesitate to attack. If she could, she would prefer to sweep all the sea demon venerables on the 4 battlefields immediately. Unfortunately, this obviously wouldn't work. Once a venerable died, a crack would appear in the sky, causing a rain of blood to fall for millions of kilometers. In this way, it would alert the enemy. The sea demon venerables were not fools. They chose to escape as soon as possible. In the 8 million kilometer sea area of the Waterwood Heaven, the venerables scattered and fled into the void. Even if the kings chased after them, they could only catch up with 1 or 2 of them. The Life Queen didn't chase after them. She needed to force the White Armor Emperor to take action. If the White Armor Emperor took action, he wouldn't have time to care about the White Shell Royal City, so Han Fei would be out of danger. The Cloud Sea Divine Tree venerables all took action, causing the venerables and explorers of the White Shell Royal City to flee. If they didn't flee now, wouldn't they be wiped out? Therefore, in this battle, they took advantage of the victory to chase after the enemy. On each of the 4 battlefields, there were Yin-Yang heavenly humans. As for how to distinguish the people from the Yin-Yang heaven, just look at whether they were using fishing boats. Although fishing boats were slower than escaping at full speed, it was more energy efficient. Therefore, whenever there were fishing boats in the sky, there would be Sky Clan members on them. Those big birds looked for people to chat with while hitching a ride. Luo Xiaobai led an army to chase after them outside the Dark War port. This kind of pursuit didn't need too many arrangements. Everyone was fighting crazily. Those sea demons that were fleeing in panic were all real resources. In the past 3 years, the Yin-Yang heavenly human tribe had been embroiled in a series of battles. The previous 250,000 people had experienced 3 to 5 battles. Although many of them had gained a lot, there were also many who had died. Nearly 20,000 people had died in the battlefield of the Waterwood Sky. Casualty rate? It was close to 10%. Of course, with such a high casualty rate, countless people were making breakthroughs. In less than 3 years, almost everyone in Yin-Yang Sky had advanced by 2 small realms. Out of 250,000 people, More than 10,000 people had advanced to become law enforcers. This ratio? The four great races of the Waterwood Sky were all dumbfounded. Although a hidden fisher was promoted to a law enforcer, it wasn't particularly difficult, but the speed of his growth was simply inconceivable. However, they did not know that this was the first time the humans of the Yin-Yang Heaven had used their resources so recklessly. As long as I have a battle record, that meant there would be resources? That meant there was room for growth. In addition to these more than 10,000 people who had advanced to become law enforcers, nearly 50,000 people had become peak-level hidden fishers. This was much stronger than when they fought on the Scattered Stars Island. In the Scattered Stars Island? Want to grow? That required a tedious exchange of resources. After all, the resources of the entire Yin-Yang Heaven were not as good as those of the Waterwood Sky. The wall of death's absorption of energy from both sides was also unbalanced. And, when they were on the Scattered Stars Island, the human race had to guard the Scattered Stars Island while cultivating. Although the situation was much better after Han Fei liberated the Scattered Stars Island. Most people could also get a lot of resources as long as they dared to fight. However, compared with the resources of the Waterwood Sky, it was still incomparable. At this moment, this group of people who came to the Waterwood Sky knew very well that they had made the right choice to follow Han Fei here. The communication between the two worlds allowed them to integrate different cultures. Not only did they learn each other's combat skills and methods, but it was also of great help to their own consciousness and awareness. Therefore, in the past 3 years, almost everyone had advanced by 1 or 2 small realms. At this moment, Luo Xiaobai, Zhang Xuanyu, and Lu Renkuang were flying across the void, sniping a semi-venerable. At this moment, the strength of these 3 people could already defeat a semi-venerable. Zhang Xuanyu's spear overlapped, and the long spear in his hand turned into nothingness. A soul spear directly blasted the semi-venerable, causing blood to spurt out of his eyes, nose, and mouth. A shadow appeared behind Lu Renkuang. Like a demon king devouring people, it cut off the void and bit off one of the semi-venerable's arms. Luo Xiaobai set up a spiritual plant array, making the semi-venerable completely lost. The skin and internal organs of the semi-venerable sea demon were quickly parasitized. The blood he vomited all turned into green and fine algae and moss. Immediately afterward, his body began to rot rapidly as if it had become moldy. In the end, his vitality was completely devoured. Withdrawing his attack, Zhang Xuanyu said, "Xiaobai. I still can't believe it. Han Fei, did you really blow up a king's nest?" Lu Renkuang's face trembled. He's still a king. Isn't it a shame that he was successfully ambushed? Luo Xiaobai rolled her eyes at the two of them. Do you want him to lose? Zhang Xuanyu smiled and said, Of course not. I just feel that we didn't even get to participate in such an exciting thing. It's such a waste. Luo Xiaobai said lightly, Okay, try to hunt more experts. The Life Queen and the Venerables will at most attack the Venerable Sea Demons. They won't attack those below the Venerable Realm. These Sea Demons are all whetstones for the 4 races of the Cloud Sea Divine Tree. They are also chasing us crazily. We can't fall behind. Take advantage of this opportunity to plunder a lot of resources and come back. Lu Renkuang muttered, I only took a little bit of the Zhang family's resources. I really should get more. Luo Xiaobai glared at Lu Renkuang. You can only train yourself if you fight for them yourself. How can you become a strong expert if you pick up other people's resources? Zhang Xuanyu said, Hey. Okay, at least we took a little bit. The 3 of us combined are enough to cultivate to the semi-venerable realm. As for becoming a venerable, it's still too early. On the day of the explosion of the Baibei royal city, more than a dozen venerables escaped from the front line. The Life Queen broke the rules and took action personally. We were really no match for them. If we hadn't run fast, we would have been killed on the spot. King, the Cloud Sea Divine Tree launched an all-out attack on us. The front lines suffered heavy casualties. We can't fight anymore. The White Armor Emperor's eyes were cold as he shouted coldly, Has the army retreated? A venerable said, The army has retreated. Although the Life Queen attacked us, she didn't attack the explorers. Therefore, the front line is currently fighting and retreating. But even so, our retreat will definitely cause a great blow to the morale of the front line. The White Armor Emperor snorted coldly. Mu Wuhua doesn't need to attack ordinary people. He only needs to wipe out the power of the Venerables. The entire 8 million kilometers of the Shuemu heaven has become a whetstone for the Cloud Sea Divine Tree. A Venerable said, "But my king, if we retreat like this, we will lose at least 30% of our frontline soldiers." How could the White Armor Emperor not know the terrible consequences if he didn't appear? If there was no king, the morale of the army would collapse, which was a big taboo. However, what was even more important than the collapse of the morale of the frontline troops was that Han Fei was still alive. In the eyes of the White Armor Emperor, Han Fei alone was worth thousands of soldiers and horses. Back then, during Xue Fan's heavenly tribulation, the White Armor Emperor clearly knew that those two people both had the potential to become kings. Xue Fan was right. He couldn't allow him to exist, but he dared to allow Han Fei to exist? Both of them were monstrous characters. Now, one of them had died, and Han Fei was still alive. This meant that when Han Fei transcended his heavenly tribulation in the future, there was almost no reason for him to fail. Therefore, at this moment, the White Armor Emperor didn't immediately respond to the Life Queen's attack. Instead, he investigated the White Shell Royal City one by one. It was also because of Han Fei's explosion that many people in the White Shell Royal City faced the White Armor Emperor head-on for the first time. One could imagine the anxiety and fear in their hearts. For example, Yukaling was extremely nervous when she saw the White Armor Emperor for the first time. The White Armor Emperor's eyes flashed with a strange halo. He didn't need to ask questions at all. Instead, he directly probed Yukaling's soul. The White Armor Emperor said, "Open your mind. Don't resist." "Yes, my king." In Forge the Universe, the old turtle said in surprise, "It seems that this White Armor Emperor really hates you. Even if he has to peep at other people's souls one by one, he will catch you. You should know that while peeping at souls, he will also see a lot of memories that he shouldn't see. The more he sees, the worse it will be for him. It's fortunate that he's a king tier. Otherwise, his brain would have been destroyed by 50,000 people." Han Fei frowned and said, "Are you sure you erased Yukaling's memories? Otherwise, if the White Armor Emperor sees something wrong, we will be in danger." The old turtle said with a smile, "Don't worry. No matter how powerful the White Armor Emperor is, he only has the sole power of the Pioneer Sea realm. He can't see anything wrong. Just focus on your cultivation. According to his speed, the number of people he can check every day is limited. He won't be able to check all of them in less than a month." Han Fei immediately said in delight, "Oh? Are you sure it will take him so long?" The old turtle said, "If he really wants to check them one by one. If he watches them too fast, his soul will accept too many memories and become confused." "That's good." 3 months later, Han Fei had already tempered the last piece of his skull. But it was this area that was extremely difficult. This piece of bone affected all the bones in his body. Once this bone was tempered, Han Fei would become a king. Therefore, he didn't dare to neglect it all. When the White Armor Emperor's 10% energy resource was less than 1/3 left, suddenly, with a bang, Han Fei's body exploded. However, a magical scene appeared. Han Fei's body was separated into dozens of pieces, and his head rolled on the ground, but his eyes were still blinking. So, this is the indestructible body? Chapter 1673. Crack, crack, cracks. Han Fei's shattered body trembled, quickly flew together, and reassembled. Immediately afterward, Han Fei felt that there seemed to be a powerful force in his body. When he looked at the demon purification pot, information popped up in his eyes. Owner Han Fei, level greater than 89, semi-king. Chaotic energy 957, spiritual power 189696, perception range greater than 78,000 kilometers, power greater than 20,971 waves, first spiritual heritage unknown, second spiritual heritage unknown, first spiritual beast, twin yin-yang spirit swallowing fish, level 78, second spiritual beast, king sparrow, level 72, main art, void arrival, level 7 of void fishing, king level, divine quality. Han Fei took a deep breath. He knew that he would be very powerful when he became a semi-king, but he never thought that the gap of a small level could make him grow so much. His soul power had increased by more than 40,000 points. Even if the fused soul was replenishing his body, the growth this time was too much. Besides, Han Fei's perception range had also increased significantly, reaching a terrifying level of 80,000 kilometers. This also meant that he could sense everything within an area of 80,000 kilometers. If his perception range was 80,000 kilometers, at this moment, Han Fei could see at least 300,000 to 500,000 kilometers away by deliberately looking through the void. In addition to the growth of his spiritual power, Han Fei's strength had increased by more than 4,800 waves. When he first came to the Shuemu heaven, his strength was only about 70 waves. But now, it was completely different from before. The breakthrough of a level increased his strength by 4,800 waves, which was already comparable to the full strength of an advanced venerable. With such power, Han Fei could no longer be regarded as a normal venerable, or even a normal demi-king realm cultivator. Under such extreme combat power, Han Fei doubted whether he could exert the combat power of a king-level cultivator now. Han Fei said, "Old Yuan, how many waves does a Pioneer Sea State cultivator have? I mean when he just entered the Pioneer Sea State." The old turtle knew that Han Fei's strength had greatly improved, so he didn't hide it. He said straightforwardly, "Generally speaking, about 50,000 waves. When you pass the King Tribulation and open up the Origin Sea, your life level will change once. This is the benefit you get from the Heavenly Tribulation. Of course, this level of life couldn't be eternal. For example, the vitality of an Exalt Realm expert would normally begin to decline after 5,000 years, and he would practically die after 10,000 years. As a king, he could live for hundreds of thousands of years. The gap between a monarch and a venerable was huge. The growth of a king's power wasn't that exaggerated. Normally, a slightly more outstanding king's power would grow by around 50,000 waves. No matter how weak they are, there are no kings with less than 40,000 waves of strength. Han Fei couldn't help but ask, "What was your strength when you expanded the sea?" The old turtle said, "Naturally, they are much stronger than the so-called chosen. At that time, I had close to 80,000 waves of power, which could be said to be 1 in 10,000. Right now, even if you transcend the tribulation and change your life level, I'm afraid you'll only be about the same as me." "How much?" Han Fei couldn't help but gasp. "Are you kidding me? King of Kings 80,000 waves, just how strong was that? That was 4 times higher than the pseudo-monarch realm." The old turtle said, "Don't be too surprised. I had the power of 80,000 waves when I opened the sea, but it doesn't mean that everyone can have such power. Ordinary people can only have about 50,000 waves." Han Fei was speechless. "What? Do you think 50,000 waves is too little or something?" Han Fei couldn't help but ask, "What about when you were a half-king?" The old turtle said unhurriedly, "A half-king? Cough, about 25,000 waves. I slept for 10,000 years before I transcended the tribulation. That's already the limit of what I can sleep for. As for you, although you are indeed talented, your life level is lower. I guess you'll be about the same as me after you expand the sea." Han Fei was lost for words. "I have double heavenly veins." The old turtle said, "So what? You have a bloodline made of my Tao. So, your aptitude is only unparalleled in this sea. Maybe you can reach the peak of the sea for a while in the expansion sea. However, if you want to go further and become a real top heavenly talent, I'm afraid you'll have to improve your life level." Han Fei was surprised. "Life level can also be improved?" The old turtle said unhurriedly, "Of course. Every time you transcend the King Tribulation, your life will be improved once. There is a huge difference between a king and a venerable. Otherwise, how can your strength double after you transcend the heavenly tribulation? This is the result of the change in your life level. Han Fei's eyes flickered. So, at the end of cultivation, someone would be called a god? Now, Han Fei didn't care about his life level. He had to become a king first. Only when he became a king would his life level change. In addition to his own improvement, Han Fei was surprised that the Emperor Sparrow had made another 2 breakthroughs in the past 3 years. He had to admit that the Emperor Sparrow had the fastest improvement of any creature Han Fei had ever seen. 3 days later, 3 months had passed outside Forge the Universe. Han Fei couldn't wait to go out, but the White Armor Emperor still had no intention of leaving. This made Han Fei speechless. Didn't the old turtle say it had been more than a month? What was the meaning of this guy dawdling for more than 3 months? Han Fei was bored. Since he didn't plan to go out, he spent some time swallowing dragon bones. It wasn't until Han Fei swallowed more than 50 dragon bones and the chaotic energy had exceeded 1,000 that the White Armor Emperor finally made a move. And this movement gave Han Fei quite a fright. On this day, an incomparably huge seashell suddenly opened its mouth. The White Armor Emperor roared, "I am the White Armor Emperor, the king of the white shell." Because the experts of the Cloud Sea Divine Tree are hiding in the capital. Now, anyone below the venerable level, come into my shell. Han Fei was surprised. Is he crazy? He doesn't even want his home anymore? He's going to cut off all means of retreat. Han Fei was horrified. Even if there were 50,000 people left in the White Shell capital, so what? How could he underestimate the 50,000 combat power? Although his previous explosion destroyed the White Shell capital, the ruins were still there, and it wasn't difficult to rebuild it. But now, just because you said you don't want it anymore, you want to abandon an entire city and take everyone with you? Even the White Armor Emperor himself didn't expect that he would have such courage one day. It was not that Han Fei didn't want to go, but because Forge the Universe was right there. The shell looked like the White Armor Emperor's origin sea or body. How could Han Fei dare to enter such a thing? Although Han Fei had reached the level of a half-king, he was not a king. Even if his power at his peak might be comparable to that of a king, so what? Power was power, and the Tao was the Tao. The Tao could be crushed. The old turtle said, "Normally, the origin sea won't be exposed to the outside world. Therefore, that giant shell is either his main body, his domain, or his companion spirit. Once you enter it, your stealth ability may be ineffective." Han Fei said, "He's quite smart. This way, he can indeed avoid me and take all his people away." However, the old turtle said unhurriedly, "Maybe it's not that simple. Don't you think the White Shell capital is too small?" The old turtle asked, "You can blow up the White Shell capital, but what about the White Armor Emperor?" In the next scene, the White Armor Emperor personally checked the situation and asked the 90 venerables to lead more than 500 people into the shell. In such a way, even if Han Fei attacked again, he wouldn't be able to hurt many people. In such a situation, Han Fei certainly couldn't attack. Otherwise, he would fall into the White Armor Emperor's trap. After a while, everyone, including Yu Kaling, entered the giant shell space. At this moment, the White Shell capital indeed became an empty city. At this moment, the White Armor Emperor's voice echoed in the sky above the White Shell capital, "Han Fei, I know you are still in the city. You want the White Shell capital? Then I'll give it to you. You can die together with the White Shell Royal City." At that moment, in the void, the sky-reaching shell shadow opened and closed its big mouth as if it were going to swallow the entire White Shell capital. The White Armor Emperor's voice was cold. "Han Fei, are you still not coming out? I'll send you and the entire Baibei Royal City into the endless void. You will be lost in the eternal darkness. And Mu Wuhua will still not be able to kill me. Although this domain wasn't big, there were countless sea spirit realm monsters. Do you really think the death of tens of thousands of people can shake me?" The old turtle said, "Sure enough, what he wants is not to take people out, but to kill you. But this time, he will pay a heavy price. Even if he completely destroys the White Shell capital, he will force you out. Han Fei was speechless. Old Yuan, it is indeed possible to get lost in the endless void, right? The old turtle said, of course. Not every time, there will be an exit waiting for you to come out. In the boundless void, there is indeed only boundless darkness. Let alone a half-step monarch like you, even this emperor would lose his way if he were to enter. There is no concept of time or direction. The greatest possibility is that you will die of old age in the boundless void. Han Fei's face darkened. So, I can only go out? The old turtle also said in a deep voice, that might be the case. This should have been the only path we could have taken a long time ago. While the old turtle was talking, hundreds of fish skin maps floated down around Han Fei. Hundreds of arrays appeared on the fish skin maps. On Han Fei's waist, the venerable token was already hanging. Activating the Gemini divine technique, Han Fei grinned and said, then let's go out and have a try. Today, let's feel how strong a real king is. Chapter 1674. The White Armor Emperor seemed to know that Han Fei would come out, so he was not in a hurry at all. In reality, if the White Shell Royal City was completely smashed into the endless void, the White Armor Emperor would lose a lot more. It could be said that all the secret training grounds in Baibei Royal City had to be redesigned. The entire earth vein of the White Shell Kingdom would have to be abandoned. As for the Forbidden Land trial grounds, it was possible that it would disappear forever, with no place to find it. However, the White Armor Emperor didn't care. As long as he could kill Han Fei, he would destroy the entire Baibei Royal City if Han Fei didn't come out today. With the White Armor Emperor's boldness, Han Fei had no other choice but to go out. However, going out represented a battle, and the opponent would be a king-level cultivator, perhaps even a few half-king-level cultivators. Although the half-step king was no longer Han Fei's opponent, as long as Han Fei delayed him, the White Armor Emperor would have a chance. Swish, swish, Han Fei's figure appeared outside Forge the Universe. Since he was destined to go out, it made no difference whether he went out sooner or later. The moment Han Fei came out, the 100 fish skins around him unfolded at the same time. Immediately afterward, Han Fei punched at the Baibei Royal City's defense array with the World's End close step. The moment Han Fei appeared, the White Armor Emperor's eyes flashed, and he grinned coldly. Shell suppresses the void, swallow the sea and devour the soul. The White Armor Emperor's voice was cold. Do you think you can escape? Even if you're the most powerful venerable one in the world, you're still just a venerable one. You have no idea the difference between a king and a venerable. Seeing that the void was blocked, Han Fei didn't hesitate at all. Only by breaking through the White Armor Emperor's domain could he have a chance to escape. Back then, the White Armor Emperor blocked the heavenly tribulation with a big shell, and Han Fei had witnessed its terrifying power. Therefore, Han Fei's current attack must create a chance for the body of black fog. Therefore, from the very beginning, Han Fei had already used the power of the Great Path. The ancient desolate combat body burst forth, and the chaotic energy surged. At the same time, the array formation gathered at the tip of the fist, and the will of invincibility condensed on the fist. The White Armor Emperor looked at this scene coldly. He held 2 large circular blades in his hands, and his figure had already arrived next to Han Fei. Boom, crack, bang. How is this possible? The White Armor Emperor's eyes suddenly widened. Could the power of the venerable realm break the seal of my shell? Even if the White Shell capital city's 5 demi-kings attacked at the same time, they would not be able to break his shell space. Poochie! Although he was protected by the 100 Daos formation, Han Fei was still unable to block the power of the White Armor Emperor's blade. The body of white mist and the void collapsed together. Therefore, when Han Fei punched through the shell space, the White Armor Emperor shattered a large area of the void with a knife. Even Han Fei's misty body was smashed into pieces, but he was still stunned. There were 2 reasons why he was stunned. One reason was that Han Fei broke through his seal, and the other reason was that it was a clone of Han Fei that broke through his seal. This was what the White Armor Emperor couldn't stand. Too fast. Han Fei's growth was too fast. How many years had it been? The last time they met, Han Fei was only an advanced venerable. His current strength was already comparable to a king tier? Yes, the White Armor Emperor could confirm that at least in terms of strength, Han Fei had almost reached the Pioneer Sea state. This almost indicated that this sea area had just destroyed a Blood Sea Divine Wood city, and as a result, there was another king tier. And this king was a human, the same as Mu Wuhua. In the White Armor Emperor's opinion, the difference between Han Fei and a king tier was only a few fucking heavenly tribulations. He watched Han Fei pass Xue Fan's heavenly tribulation. At that time, Han Fei was still an advanced venerable. Now, Han Fei was a demi-king. Wasn't it a piece of cake for him to pass a tribulation? Thinking of this, the White Armor Emperor's perception swept the void, looking for where Han Fei's real body was. If Han Fei wanted to escape quickly, his speed couldn't be too slow. The White Armor Emperor's perception didn't need to see Han Fei. He only sensed the changes in space. Sure enough, in just an instant, the White Armor Emperor stepped through the void and threw a knife to a place 800 kilometers away. At this time, the body of black mist knew that it couldn't run away, so it directly showed itself. After crossing 3,000 kilometers in a few steps, the White Armor Emperor's knife still caught up with it. Bim, Han Fei turned around and punched horizontally. On the tip of the fist, time flowed, and the White Armor Emperor's crazy power cut the air on both sides. Han Fei stepped back and launched so close, yet worlds apart. But no matter how fast Han Fei was, the White Armor Emperor wasn't slow either. In the blink of an eye, the two appeared 10,000 kilometers away. In the sky above the White Shell Kingdom, the 5 demi-kings were all dumbfounded. Damn it, is he still a human? It was the first time in their lives that they had seen a venerable fight against a king. Because the strength of Han Fei, Little Black and Little White was constantly growing stronger. Therefore, the distance between the two clones could be further. 10,000 kilometers away, Han Fei shouted, "White Armor Emperor, I'm here. Let's see if you have the ability to catch me." Humph. You're courting death. Suppress. An invisible force directly ignored the existence of space and fell on Han Fei. At that moment, Han Fei only felt that the area within 100 meters of him was blocked by an invisible seal. The body of black mist directly turned into a cloud of black mist. The black mist swirled wildly, and in the blink of an eye, half of the seal was eaten. At this moment, the White Armor Emperor's fist mark had already blasted over. However, at the same moment, where the body of white mist collapsed, Han Fei's figure reappeared. Not only did he appear, but also a teleportation array appeared. This was a long-distance random teleportation array, with a teleportation range between 200,000 and 500,000 kilometers. At the moment when the body of white mist appeared, the White Armor Emperor shouted, "Hai Tinglei." Boom! Before the White Armor Emperor spoke, a lightning mark had arrived in a flash, intending to stop Han Fei. Behind Hai Tinglei, the other 4 demi-kings also reacted and were coming to rescue him. Half of Han Fei's body of white mist had already entered the array, and he shouted, "Time, draw the knife." In front of Han Fei, time reversed. Han Fei drew a knife from it. Perhaps when facing the White Armor Emperor, Han Fei didn't show much strength. However, the speed of Hai Tinglei's lightning mark became very slow in the face of time. A blade of time didn't give him any chance at all. With one slash, Hai Tinglei was cut into pieces, and his flesh and blood quickly decayed. Boom! It wasn't the crack of the heavenly law that appeared, but Han Fei's body of black mist and the White Armor Emperor collided. Although most of the body of black mist had exploded into powder, Han Fei still grinned. "I thought, how strong is a king? It turns out that you're just SOS." As he spoke, Han Fei's body of black mist shouted, "This place is forbidden." The next moment, Han Fei stretched his hand into the void and directly grabbed Hai Tinglei's body, 3 wisps of soul, and a sun-moon shell into the teleportation array. Gemini as 1. Swish, the next moment, Han Fei used Gemini as 1 and recovered to his full state. At the moment when he stepped into the void, he looked back and stretched out his hand. Time reversed, accelerating the closing of the teleportation array. Even though the White Armor Emperor's blow had already touched the teleportation array, he still hit nothing in the end. In the void, Han Fei's void lines pierced straight at Hai Tingley. Hai Tingley, who was trying to be reborn, was horrified. How is this possible? How can this person be so strong? He couldn't even block one blow and was smashed to pieces. Is this guy a king? After a few seconds, Han Fei drilled out of the void. The nautical panorama in his hand was already pointing in the direction of the Cloud Sea Divine Tree. Before Han Fei had time to kill Hai Tingley, he once again escaped into the void and began to flee frantically. Of course, before escaping into the void, Han Fei's soul collided with the White Armor Emperor's soul above the sea and collided with each other. The old turtle said, "Don't fight head-on. Go to the Cloud Sea Divine Tree." The distance of more than 300,000 kilometers was nothing for a king. However, what chilled the White Armor Emperor was Han Fei's clone ability. A clone could break the seal of his shell armor. A clone could take a blow from him head-on. Han Fei's strength had already surpassed that of a half-king and had entered the realm of a king. And Han Fei was also measuring the strength of the White Armor Emperor. Han Fei said, "Old Yuan, didn't you say that the power of an ordinary king is only about 50,000 waves? The White Armor Emperor's power is more than 50,000 waves. It's at least 60,000 waves." The old turtle snorted coldly and said, "He has been a king for tens of thousands of years, okay? Besides, his power is not 60,000 waves, but at least 70,000 waves. And that's because he made a hasty move just now. I'm afraid that his strongest power may reach 80,000 waves." Boom. At this moment, Han Fei killed Hai Tingley. A crack of the great path appeared in the sky. A half-king was killed in one blow just to intercept Han Fei for a moment. After all, it was a celestial phenomenon of the death of a half-king. It was impossible for the Cloud Sea Divine Tree to not notice anything. Han Fei's clone shouted, "Your Majesty, help." Li Daxian suddenly became vigilant and looked at Han Fei. What happened? Boom! At that moment, when the crack appeared, Li Daxian disappeared with a hum and rushed straight out of the Dark War port. When Han Fei rushed out of the White Shell Kingdom, the White Armor Emperor had already chased after him. The distance between the two was more than 300,000 kilometers, but now the distance between them was only a few 100,000 kilometers. Han Fei used all his strength, and the Heavenly Void Divine Walking Technique was useless at this moment. No matter how strong the Divine Walking Technique was, it was still a secret technique of the Venerable Realm. Facing the pursuit of a king, Han Fei kept activating arrays on his body, constantly accelerating himself. When he escaped 1.5 million kilometers, the White Armor Emperor had already chased after him. Han Fei used the Gemini Divine Technique again, intending to repeat the same trick. However, this time, only a giant shell could be seen transforming into a human. The White Armor Emperor shouted, "Han Fei, do you really think I don't have any means?" You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.